Tonight, as you lie down and allow the world to grow quiet around you, I want you to understand that this is not an ordinary descent into sleep. The room may appear the same. The bed beneath you may feel familiar. The darkness may gather as it has gathered on countless nights before. But tonight is not merely the ending of another day. Tonight is a threshold. Tonight is a doorway. Tonight is an invitation to enter a state so deeply, so completely, that sleep itself becomes its guardian, and the morning finds you still clothed in it. Let the body begin to release the day. Let the hands soften, let the shoulders loosen, let the face become still. Let every little tension you carried from the hours behind you begin to dissolve. The conversations of the day, the demands of the world, the things that seemed urgent beneath the sun, allow them now to move farther and farther away. You need not wrestle with them tonight. You need not solve them before rest. There is a deeper work before you now, a quieter work, a holier work. It is the work of choosing the state in which you will sleep. You are hovering now between waking and sleep, between the world of the senses and the world of imagination. This hour is precious. The outer world begins to fade, and the inner world becomes vivid. The senses grow less insistent. The evidence of the day loses some of its authority. The old story does not speak quite as loudly here, unless you invite it. And I tell you now, do not invite it. The old state must not be carried into the night. Most men and women fall asleep, still wearing the garments of the day. They bring worry into bed. They bring resentment into bed. They bring waiting into bed. They bring the same identity they long to escape and surrender themselves to sleep while still bound to it. They ask for a new world, yet they offer the subconscious the old one as its final impression. And then they wake tomorrow, only to find the familiar mood waiting for them like a faithful servant, because they slept as the old self, and the old self rose with them. Perhaps you have known this. Perhaps you have touched the fulfilled state at night. Perhaps you have imagined with sincerity, felt for a few precious moments that the desire was already yours, rested briefly in the certainty that it was done. And then morning came. The senses returned. The world displayed the same appearances. The mind remembered what it feared. And almost without noticing, you slipped back into the former state. You had entered fulfillment, yes, but only as a visitor. You had tasted it, but you did not dwell there. You imagined from the end at night, but awakened in the old identity by day. This is why tonight matters. For tonight, the purpose is not merely to visit the fulfilled state. Tonight, the purpose is to remain there. Tonight, you do not practice fulfillment as though it were a momentary exercise. Tonight, you enter it. Tonight, you do not borrow a feeling for a few minutes and then return it to the unseen. You accept it as your own. You let it become your inward atmosphere. You let it settle upon you as naturally as sleep itself. What if the state you enter tonight could become the state you return to tomorrow? What if the first feeling that greeted you upon waking were not concern, not lack, not the memory of what has not yet changed, but the soft continuation of the state in which you fell asleep? What if sleep were not a pause in your assumption, but the deepening of it? What if the fulfilled state could become your inward home, the place to which your consciousness returns without strain, without effort, without being summoned by force? These are not idle questions. They go to the very heart of creation, for what a man dwells in inwardly becomes the pattern of his world. What is briefly touched may pass. What is repeatedly entered may grow familiar. What is made familiar becomes natural, and what becomes natural must, in time, be expressed. Therefore, tonight, I will not speak to you merely of desire. I will speak to you of dwelling. I will not speak merely of a moment of imagination. I will speak of inhabiting the end. I will not ask you to strain toward fulfillment. I will ask you to rest in it until rest and fulfillment become one. Do not sleep tonight as one who waits. Waiting is a state, and if you sleep in waiting, you strengthen waiting. Do not sleep tonight as one who wonders whether life will answer. Wondering is a state, and if you sleep in uncertainty, uncertainty deepens. Do not sleep tonight as one who looks toward a future promise as though it were far away. The future has no creative power except as you assume it now. Sleep as one who has already received. Sleep as one who has entered the answer. Sleep as one who no longer asks from outside the door, but rests within the fulfilled chamber. I will guide you tonight into the state of the wish fulfilled, not as a philosophy to admire from afar, but as a living mood to enter. I will show you why drifting is not failure, because every mind wanders until it learns its true home. I will show you how to return gently, without condemnation, without panic, without turning one passing thought into a new identity. I will show you how the fulfilled state becomes natural, effortless, and dominant, not through violence, not through constant inner struggle, but through loving repetition, quiet loyalty, and the patient decision to return whenever you notice you have wandered. The old self may have accompanied you for many years. It may have spoken in your voice. It may have called itself practical. It may have said, "This is simply how things are." It may have taught you to wake each morning remembering lack before remembering God. It may have trained you to see circumstances first and consciousness second. But tonight, I ask you to see differently. Circumstances are shadows. Consciousness is the light. The visible world is the outpicturing of inner states. Therefore, the state you accept tonight matters more than the appearances you carried from the day. The old state must not be carried into the night. Let it stop at the threshold. If it says, "Nothing has changed," answer inwardly, "I am not here to report appearances. I am here to choose the state from which appearances change." If it says, "You have tried before," answer, "I am not repeating effort. I am entering fulfillment." If it says, "What if you wake and feel the same?" answer, "Then I shall return." And every return makes the new state stronger. You need not argue long with the old self. You need only refuse to let it accompany you into sleep. Tonight you do not practice fulfillment. You enter it. Feel the difference. Practice may still carry the sense of trying. Entering means you cross the threshold. Practicing may suggest a future achievement. Entering means the state is available now. Practicing may be performed from the outer mind. Entering is an inward assumption. So enter. Enter quietly. Enter simply. Enter as though the fulfilled state had been waiting for you all along. What is the desire you have held before the mind? Is it love? Is it peace? Is it restoration? Is it health? Is it financial ease? Is it the return of something cherished? Is it a door opening? Is it the relief of finally knowing that what you longed for is yours? Whatever it is, do not hold it tonight as a distant object. Let it become a state. Let it become an atmosphere. Let it become the truth from which you now rest. If your desire were fulfilled, how would you feel? Not what would you boast of, not what would you prove to others, but what would quietly change inside you. Would you breathe more softly? Would the body release? Would the heart rest? Would the mind stop reaching? That is the state. Enter that state now. Let the body tell you when you have approached it. The shoulders drop. The breath becomes less guarded. The face softens. The inner pressure weakens. There may be a faint smile. There may be a deep sigh. There may be a gentle warmth of gratitude. Do not force these things. Let them arise as signs that you are moving away from waiting and toward possession. The fulfilled state is not always dramatic. Often it is profoundly peaceful. It is the end of inner asking. It is the quiet awareness. It is done. I want you to understand that the fulfilled state is not maintained by anxious vigilance. You are not being asked to spend the night policing every thought. You are not being asked to become afraid of drifting. You are being invited to choose a home. When a traveler leaves the road and returns home, he does not struggle to remain in every room. He simply knows where he belongs. So too with consciousness. Tonight you discover where you belong inwardly. You belong in the end. You belong in fulfillment. You belong in the state of already having. And if during the night the mind wanders, if a thought from the old story floats by, let it pass as a cloud passes over the moon. The moon is not harmed by the cloud. The fulfilled state is not destroyed by a passing thought. You need not awaken into fear because the mind moved. Return gently. Return inwardly. Return to the simple feeling. It is already done. That return is not failure. That return is mastery beginning. Every time you return, you teach the mind a new direction. Every time you return, you weaken the old road. Every time you return, the state of fulfillment becomes more familiar. Perhaps for many nights you have imagined your desire, and for many mornings you have felt as though you lost it. Tonight, let that pattern begin to change. Tonight, do not merely fall asleep after touching the wish fulfilled. Fall asleep inside it. Let it be the last atmosphere of your mind. Let it be the final emotional truth you hand to the subconscious. Let sleep receive not your fear, but your completion. Not your waiting, but your having. Not your old state, but your new identity. The subconscious is faithful. It receives what is impressed upon it and proceeds without argument. It does not ask whether the senses approve. It does not consult the day's evidence. It accepts the final feeling. Therefore, give it a noble final feeling tonight. Give it fulfillment. Give it relief. Give it certainty. Give it the state you wish to see multiplied in your world. And when sleep takes you, know that the work is not abandoned, it is deepened. Tonight, as the outer world fades, as the body settles, as the mind grows more inward, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not here to escape life. You are here to choose the life you will meet. You are not here to forget your desire. You are here to become one with the state of its fulfillment. You are not here to struggle into a better future. You are here to inhabit the end now. Do not sleep tonight as one who waits. Sleep as one who has already received. The old state must not be carried into the night. Tonight you do not practice fulfillment. You enter it. You rest in it. You allow it to surround you. You let it become soft and natural. You let it become the place where consciousness lies down to sleep. And as you listen, as the room grows quieter still, as every word becomes less an instruction and more a gentle accompaniment into the deep, ask yourself only this: what would it feel like if it were already done? Then do not answer with the mind. Answer with the body. Answer with the breath. Answer with the softening of the heart. Let the feeling arise. Let it remain. Let it carry you. Tonight, you are not simply going to sleep. You are entering and remaining in the state of fulfillment. Now I would ask you a question, and I ask that you receive it quietly, without defense, without hurry, without attempting to give the answer you believe you ought to give. Let the question descend gently into you, and allow it to reveal something true. How much of the day do you truly live from the fulfilled state? Not how often do you desire it. Not how often do you think about it. Not how often do you close your eyes and picture it for a moment. Not how often do you repeat phrases that describe it. But how much of the day do you actually live inwardly as though it were already true? How often do you move through the hours as the one who has already received? How often do you breathe from possession rather than longing? How often do you carry the quiet certainty of fulfillment into the ordinary moments, into the small movements of the day, into the pauses between tasks, into the moments when no formal practice is being performed? How often do you truly dwell there? This question explains more than many imagine. It explains why some desires seem to approach and then recede. It explains why a person may have beautiful moments before sleep, moments of tenderness, faith, and inner acceptance, and yet awaken to find the old mood waiting just outside the door of morning. It explains why the wish fulfilled may be touched with sincerity at night, but not yet expressed in the outer world. For many do indeed visit the fulfilled state, they simply do not yet live there. A person lies down at night and enters imagination with great devotion. The room is quiet, the body is still, the senses are less demanding. They choose a scene that implies fulfillment. They feel relief, they feel peace. For a little while, perhaps longer, they truly know it is done. The old burdens seem to dissolve, the heart grows lighter, the mind stops arguing, the desire is no longer far away. It is present, it is accepted. They fall asleep in that sweetness, and it is good, it is powerful, it is real. But then morning comes, the eyes open, the room appears, the body rises, and almost before the fulfilled state has had time to breathe in the waking world, the old identity returns. The old concern speaks first, the old fear steps forward, the old lack climbs back upon the throne. The mind remembers what has not yet changed outwardly. It returns to the old account of life. It looks at appearances and says, "Ah, yes, this is still my reality." And without noticing, the person who slept in fulfillment begins the day from absence. They do not mean to do this. They may even love the Lord deeply. They may believe sincerely that imagination creates reality. Yet, habit is subtle. The old state is familiar. It knows the way back. It has been worn for years. It rises quickly because it has been rehearsed often. And so the person who rested as one already blessed at night may by mid-morning feel again like one still waiting. This is not because the night practice was useless. It was not useless. Every true assumption has power. Every moment of sincere fulfillment enters the deep. But if one waters a seed of abundance at night and then spends the day watering fear, the field receives mixed instruction. You cannot plant one seed of abundance at night and then water fear all day. You cannot sleep in possession and then spend the hours of waking repeatedly declaring inwardly that nothing has changed, that the desire is absent, that the outer world remains master. The state that becomes home is the state that becomes visible. And here is the tenderness of the matter. Most people are not faithless. They are divided. Part of them believes in the unseen. Part of them remains loyal to the seen. Part of them enters the end. Part of them continues to live from the beginning. Part of them says, it is done. Part of them spends the day wondering, when will it happen? And the law does not punish this division. The law simply reflects the dominant state. The dominant state wins, not because the law is harsh, but because the law is exact. If for one peaceful hour you feel fulfilled, and for many other hours you worry, check, fear, regret, compare, rehearse old conversations, and ask whether the desire is still absent, then the consciousness most consistently occupied is not fulfillment, but waiting. The law is not offended. It is not withholding. It is faithfully giving form to what is most deeply and repeatedly accepted. A brief visit to fulfillment is not the same as dwelling there. A brief visit may comfort you. A brief visit may inspire you. A brief visit may even plant something beautiful. But dwelling means the state begins to claim you. Dwelling means you return to it, not only when the room is dark and the body is still, but when the day begins to speak. Dwelling means that the fulfilled state becomes less like a sacred chamber. You enter only at night, and more like the inward house from which you live. Ask yourself again gently, where do I live most of the day? Do I live in the state of already having, or in the state of wishing to have? Do I live as one already loved, or as one watching for proof of love? Do I live as one already secure, or as one measuring every circumstance to determine whether security has arrived? Do I live as one already chosen, or as one still wondering whether I will be passed over? Do I live as one already healed, or as one whose attention remains captivated by the old condition? Do I live as one already supplied, or as one who keeps rehearsing lack? You need not answer harshly. This is not a court of judgment. It is a lamp held gently over the inner life. It is meant to illuminate, not accuse, for once you see where you have been living, you gain the power to choose another dwelling. Many say they desire a thing, but desire often confesses distance. Desire says, I want. Fulfillment says, I have. Desire looks toward the object. Fulfillment looks from it. Desire stretches out its hand. Fulfillment rests its hand upon what is already its own, in consciousness. There is nothing wrong with desire as the beginning of movement. Desire awakens you to a possible state, but you cannot remain forever in desire and expect to experience possession. At some point, desire must ripen into assumption. And yet, what do many do? They keep the wish in front of them like a beautiful picture hanging upon a wall. They admire it. They imagine it. They speak of it. They long for it, but they do not climb into the picture and live there. They do not allow the self to become the self who has it. They do not let the inward identity shift. So the desire remains beloved, contemplated, and still seemingly separate. This is why I ask not how often you think about your fulfilled state, but how often you live from it. Thinking about is not the same as being. Speaking about is not the same as occupying. Visualizing is not always the same as assuming. One may visualize abundance while inwardly remaining poor. One may imagine reconciliation while inwardly remaining rejected. One may picture success while inwardly feeling uncertain and unchosen. The image is useful only as it carries you into the state. The state is the creative thing. Suppose at night you feel yourself already free. You imagine the relief. You sleep beautifully. Then in the morning you rise and inwardly say, I dread this day. I do not know how I will manage. Nothing has changed. At that moment, you have stepped out of the fulfilled state and returned to the old identity, not because circumstances forced you, but because consciousness consented again to the old story. The appearance may have invited it, but you accepted it. Suppose at night you feel already loved. You hear the inner words you long to hear. You rest in companionship. Then during the day, one silence, one delayed sign, one ordinary moment becomes an occasion for fear. You begin asking, why is there no proof? What if I imagined in vain? And in that questioning, you return to the state of not having. The law is not against you. The law simply responds to where you dwell. Suppose at night you feel financial ease. You imagine peace. You feel the burden lifted. Then the day presents a bill, and the old reaction returns immediately. The body tightens. The mind declares, I am still stuck. The inner speech becomes fear again. The seed planted at night has not vanished, But now you are watering fear, and fear, watered continually, becomes a thick vine over the garden of fulfillment. This is why the fulfilled state must not be treated as a nightly visitor only. It must become more familiar during the day. Not through strain, not by pretending before others, not by denying what the senses report, but by ceasing to worship appearances as final. The outer world may present old facts. You need not argue with them. You need not become theatrical. You simply refuse to make them your inner dwelling. You acknowledge what appears, but you live from what you have accepted in consciousness. The state that becomes home is the state that becomes visible. Think of a house you know well. You do not need to remind yourself constantly that it is yours. You move through it naturally. You know where the door is. You know where the light enters. You know where to rest. So too must the fulfilled state become known inwardly. At first, perhaps, you must enter deliberately. You must find the door again and again. But as you return, it becomes familiar. Then when the mind wanders, it returns there more easily. Eventually, it no longer feels like an exercise. It feels like home. This is what I desire for you. Not brief ecstasy followed by long doubt. Not one beautiful hour followed by many hours of inward contradiction. I desire that the fulfilled state become your inner dwelling. I desire that you know how to return to it when the mind drifts. I desire that you stop making the old identity your default simply because it has been familiar. Familiarity is not truth. Habit is not destiny. Repetition has made the old state feel natural. But repetition in a new direction can make fulfillment feel natural too. Tonight, as you listen, let yourself be honest without becoming discouraged. Perhaps you have been visiting your desire rather than living in it. If so, be grateful for the seeing. What is revealed can be changed. What is unconscious continues by habit. What is brought into awareness becomes available for transformation. You do not need to condemn yourself for leaving the state. You need only understand that the work now is to return more often, gently, faithfully, until the return becomes instinctive. The fulfilled state is not fragile. It is not destroyed because you forgot it for a moment. It is not lost because an old thought passed through the mind. But it becomes dominant through loyalty. Every return matters. Every inward correction matters. Every moment in which you notice, I am worrying again, and softly say, no, I return to the end, matters. You are not merely correcting a thought. You are moving your dwelling place. The man who lives in lack does not need to repeat lack every second to remain in lack. It has become natural. The woman who lives in disappointment does not need to affirm disappointment deliberately every hour. It has become her inward atmosphere. In the same way, the fulfilled state, once made natural, does not require constant strain. But before it becomes natural, it must be chosen repeatedly. It must be remembered. It must be entered. It must be made familiar. So I ask once more, very softly, where do you live most of the day? Do not answer with what you wish were true. Answer with what your inner conversations reveal. Answer with how you respond when the senses speak. Answer with the mood you return to when no deliberate practice is being performed. This answer is not a sentence against you, it is a map. It shows where to turn inwardly. It shows what must be renewed. It shows why tonight is not merely about falling asleep in the end, but about awakening tomorrow with the intention to return to it again. 1 hour in fulfillment and many hours in worry do not carry equal weight. The law is not moved by fairness, as men understand it. It is exact. It externalizes the state most deeply and repeatedly accepted. But do not let this trouble you. Let it empower you. For if the old state became dominant through repetition, the new state can become dominant through repetition also. If you learn to return to fear, you can learn to return to fulfillment. If you became fluent in waiting, you can become fluent in having. If lack became home, abundance can become home. You cannot plant one seed of abundance at night and then water fear all day. So tonight, do not merely plant the seed. Decide that tomorrow you will protect it, not anxiously, not with strain, but with gentle remembrance. Decide that when you wake, you will not immediately crown the old state. Decide that when the day speaks, you will listen from the fulfilled state. Decide that when you drift, you will return. A brief visit to fulfillment is not the same as dwelling there, but every dwelling begins with one entrance, then another, until the place becomes home. Tonight is one entrance. Tomorrow morning may be another. The first pause in the day may be another. The next moment you remember may be another. Do not despise small returns. They build the inward house. And now, as the night deepens, let this recognition settle gently into you. Perhaps you have visited your desire. Perhaps you have loved it from afar. Perhaps you have touched it before sleep and lost it by morning. But now you understand. The state must become home. The fulfilled self must become familiar. The end must be returned to again and again, until it is no longer a place you go, but the place from which you live. Let that be enough for now. Let the insight soften you rather than burden you. There is no accusation here. There is only a new awareness, and awareness is the beginning of freedom. Tonight you rest not merely in a beautiful moment, but in the intention to dwell. Tonight you allow fulfillment to become more than a nightly practice. You allow it to begin becoming your inward home. Consciousness never sleeps. This is one of the first truths you must understand if you would live wisely, if you would cease moving in circles, if you would stop giving your desire a few sacred moments at night while unconsciously surrendering the rest of the day to the old world. Consciousness is never off. It does not awaken only when you close your eyes and begin an imaginal act. It does not begin creating only when you deliberately say, "Now I will practice." It is always active, always assuming, always accepting, always giving birth to the state most deeply entertained. You are not creative only in prayer. You are not creative only in meditation. You are creative when you worry. You are creative when you complain. You are creative when you expect rejection. You are creative when you remember an insult with feeling. You are creative when you rehearse tomorrow's difficulty before tomorrow has arrived. The law does not pause because you are distracted. It does not wait until you feel spiritual. It does not take rest because you have forgotten it. It is always in operation. What you are conscious of being, what you inwardly accept, what mood you return to, what inner speech you permit to continue unchecked, all of it belongs to the field of creation. Man is always assuming something. He may assume fulfillment, or he may assume delay. He may assume love, or he may assume abandonment. He may assume wealth, or he may assume struggle. He may assume health, or he may assume weakness. But he is never without assumption. Every mood is a state. Every inner word belongs to a state. Every reaction reveals a state. When a small event disturbs you deeply, it is not merely the event speaking. It is a state within you responding. When a passing silence awakens fear, it is not merely the silence. It is the state of insecurity interpreting the silence. When a delay causes despair, it is not merely the delay. It is the state of doubt giving meaning to the delay. The outer thing may appear to be the cause, but I tell you, the inner state is the interpreter, and interpretation soon becomes experience. Consciousness is the only reality. The world you call external is consciousness objectified, assumption made visible, state pushed outward into form. Therefore, if consciousness is always active, then creation is always underway. Not only when you select a scene before sleep, not only when you feel inspired, not only when you listen to words like these, always. The sleeping man thinks practice begins when he closes his eyes. He says, "Now I shall imagine. Now I shall enter the end. Now I shall create." Then he rises in the morning and returns to mechanical living, speaking inwardly from fear, reacting from lack, assuming the very opposite of what he accepted the night before. He thinks he has stopped practicing because he has stopped visualizing. But he has not stopped practicing. He has only begun practicing the old state again. The awakened man knows he is practicing whenever he assumes a state. When he imagines the fulfilled end, he is practicing. When he receives contrary evidence and remains inwardly unmoved, he is practicing. When fear rises and he returns gently to the state of peace, he is practicing. When he refuses to call delay failure, he is practicing. When he chooses not to repeat the old story within himself, he is practicing. His whole life becomes the cultivation of consciousness, not in strain, but in awareness. The careless man thinks nothing is happening while he worries. He says, "I am only thinking." He believes worry is harmless because it appears invisible. He does not see that worry is imagination misused. It is an imaginal act charged with feeling. He feels the feared outcome before it happens. He lives inwardly in the disappointment before disappointment has arrived. He rehearses conversations that have not taken place. He imagines losses not yet suffered. He enters the very state he says he wishes to avoid. And because consciousness is creative, worry becomes a seed. The awakened man knows worry is also an imaginal act. Therefore, he does not condemn himself for its appearance, but he does not entertain it as truth. He recognizes it. He says, "This is imagination moving in the wrong direction." Then he turns it. If the mind has imagined loss, he imagines restoration. If it has imagined rejection, he imagines acceptance. If it has imagined failure, he imagines completion. He understands that the same faculty that created anxiety can be directed toward peace. You must begin to see every inner movement as meaningful, not with nervousness, not with the fear that one passing thought will destroy your desire, but with reverence for the power within you. A passing thought may arise from habit and disappear without root, but a thought accepted, repeated, and clothed with feeling becomes a state, and a state occupied frequently becomes a dwelling. The state most frequently occupied becomes the world most naturally expressed. This is why a person may have one strong imaginal act and still find the outer world slow to change. The act may indeed be powerful, it may plant a seed, but if the rest of consciousness continues to dwell in contradiction, the seed is not given a peaceful field. The deeper work is not merely to have a moment of fulfillment, but to allow fulfillment to become the dominant inward atmosphere. Not perfect, not uninterrupted, but increasingly natural, increasingly familiar, increasingly the place to which you return. During sleep, the subconscious receives deeply. In the drowsy state, the critical mind weakens, the senses grow quiet. The inner scene, the inner feeling, the final mood before sleep sinks more readily into the depths. This is why the night is precious. The subconscious accepts the feeling and begins its hidden work. It takes the state you impress and sets about externalizing its likeness through events, impulses, circumstances, and arrangements beyond the reach of your conscious planning. But during waking, inner speech either sustains or contradicts the state. You may sleep in love and wake speaking loneliness. You may sleep in abundance and spend the day declaring limitation. You may sleep in health and rise as one who continually identifies with weakness. The subconscious receives deeply at night, but the conscious mind continues to feed it by day. This is why the waking hours matter. The night plants. The day either waters or withholds water. The night impresses. The day either agrees or disputes. The night gives the seed. The day reveals whether you remain loyal to what you planted. Do not misunderstand me. You are not to spend the day anxiously inspecting every thought. That would be another form of fear. You are to become aware of the state from which your thoughts arise. A thought of lack may come and go, but if you follow it, repeat it, argue for it, identify with it, then you have entered the state of lack. A thought of disappointment may pass before the mind, but if you embrace it, feel it, build upon it, you have moved into disappointment. Therefore, the question is not whether thoughts appear. The question is which thoughts you consent to dwell with. The law is always in operation. When you feel fulfilled, the law is at work. When you feel forgotten and remain there, the law is at work. When you bless another inwardly, the law is at work. When you resent another inwardly, the law is at work. When you revise a conversation before sleep, the law is at work. When you replay a wound and strengthen it, the law is at work. There is no neutral hour in consciousness. There are only states being occupied, abandoned, or reinforced. And because consciousness is the only reality, you must cease treating invisible states as powerless. The world has taught man to trust what he can touch, and to dismiss what he can only imagine. Yet everything visible was once invisible. Every event was once a possibility. Every form had its beginning in consciousness. The house was imagined before it was built. The journey was conceived before the first step was taken. The reconciliation was inwardly accepted before the meeting occurred. The outer is always late. The inner is first. If you wish to know what state you are occupying, listen to your inner speech. When you are not performing a formal practice, what do you say within? Do you say, "It is working out"? Or do you say, "Nothing is changing"? Do you say, "I am already the one who has received"? Or do you say, "I am still waiting"? Do you say, "This appearance is old evidence"? Or do you instantly bow before it as final? Your inner speech is a faithful messenger. It reveals the house in which consciousness is living. Notice also your reactions. A reaction is often a sudden confession of state. Someone does not answer immediately, and fear arises. A number appears, and anxiety rises. A memory returns, and shame awakens. A small obstacle appears, and the whole world seems threatened. These reactions are not to be hated. They are revelations. They show you what has been living within unnoticed. and what is revealed may be changed. When you see a reaction, do not say, I have failed. Say, I have discovered the state that needs replacing. Then gently return. If fear rose, enter safety. If lack rose, enter supply. If rejection rose, enter being chosen. If uncertainty rose, enter the feeling that the matter is settled. The appearance gave you a chance to practice loyalty to the unseen. It did not come to condemn you. It came to show you where to awaken. The sleeping man lives as though consciousness were passive and the outer world active. He says, things happen to me, and then I feel accordingly. The awakened man reverses the order. He says, I occupy a state, and the world reflects that state. The sleeping man treats feelings as reactions. The awakened man treats feelings as creative causes. The sleeping man blames appearances. The awakened man revises the state. The sleeping man waits for circumstances to improve, so he may feel differently. The awakened man feels differently and allows circumstances to improve. This is not a denial of the visible. It is a restoration of proper order. The visible may be acknowledged, but it must not be enthroned. The inner state is king. The outer circumstance is servant. When the servant appears delayed, do not dethrone the king. When the shadow remains for a moment, do not declare the light unchanged. Remain faithful to the state you have entered. There is something wonderfully freeing in knowing that consciousness never sleeps. It means no moment is wasted. It means each moment of return matters. It means a small inward adjustment while walking, sitting, resting, or waking can be creative. It means the law is not confined to one ritual. Your life itself becomes the temple. Your ordinary moments become opportunities to dwell in the end. Your inner awareness becomes the altar upon which the old state is surrendered and the new state is chosen. At night, you enter deeply. By day, you return gently. At night, you impress the subconscious. By day, you refuse to nourish the old state. At night, you sleep in the wish fulfilled. By day, you remember that the wish fulfilled remains true in consciousness, whether or not the visible world has yet conformed. This is how the state becomes dominant. This is how the fulfilled state passes from technique into identity. Do not fear that you must be flawless. Consciousness is always active. Yes, but mastery is not the absence of every wandering thought. Mastery is the growing habit of returning. It is the refusal to turn drift into residence. It is the choice, again and again, to identify with fulfillment rather than absence. A cloud may cross the sky remains. An old thought may cross consciousness. The chosen state may still remain your home if you return to it. So let tonight's understanding settle deeply. Every inner state matters, even the ones you once thought harmless. Every mood has direction. Every inward word has implication. Every reaction reveals identity. Consciousness is never off. Imagination is never truly inactive. Man is always assuming something. The only question is what he will consciously choose to assume. And now, as you become quieter, as the body grows more willing to rest, let this truth not burden you, but empower you. You are not helpless before the current of thought. You are the chooser of states. You are not condemned to continue unconsciously rehearsing the old world. You may notice, you may return, you may dwell, you may sleep in fulfillment, and wake determined to remember. The law is always in operation, and that means the moment you return to the fulfilled state, creation is again moving in the direction of your chosen end. Consciousness never sleeps. Therefore, let consciousness tonight rest in fulfillment. Let the final state be peace. Let the final inner speech be assurance. Let the final assumption be, it is done. And know that while the outer man sleeps, the law continues its faithful work in silence. Every person has an inner home, not a house of stone, not a place marked upon a map, but a familiar state of consciousness to which the mind returns when attention loosens its grip. It is the mood that feels ordinary. It is the identity that feels most believable. It is the inward atmosphere that quietly says, this is who I am. This is how life is. This is what I expect. And because it feels natural, consciousness returns to it again and again. For one person, that inner home may be peace. For another, it may be quiet confidence. For another, it may be love, supply, favor, and the expectation of good. But for many who listen tonight, the inner home has been something less gentle. It has been fear. It has been waiting. It has been lack. It has been loneliness. It has been the state of not yet healed, not yet chosen, not yet secure, not yet free. not yet answered. This is why the desired state can seem difficult to maintain. It is not because imagination lacks power. It is because the old state has been lived in for so long that it feels like home. The mind knows its rooms. It knows where to place its worries. It knows how to walk its familiar corridors. It knows the language spoken there. It knows the old chair of disappointment, the old window of waiting, the old bed of fear. And when deliberate attention relaxes, consciousness returns to that house because it has returned there countless times before. A man may enter the fulfilled state before sleep and feel for a while the joy of possession. He may imagine beautifully. He may rest in the answer. He may, for several tender moments, live in another world. But if the old state remains his inner home, then when attention drifts, he returns to it as naturally as a river returns to its old bed after the rain has passed. For a moment, the water may flood new ground. For a moment, it may flow where it has not flowed before. But unless a new channel is formed, it eventually returns to the path worn by years. So it is with consciousness. A new state may be entered, but if it has not yet become inwardly familiar, the mind may flow back toward the former condition. This does not mean the new state was false. It means the old channel has been practiced longer. It means the work now is not merely to taste fulfillment, but to deepen its channel within you until consciousness begins to move there naturally. Think of a bird that has made its nest in a certain tree. Each evening, after flying through vast skies, after seeing fields, rivers, rooftops, and distant hills, it returns to the same branch because that branch has become home. The fulfilled state may appear to you like a beautiful sky, wide and luminous, filled with possibilities. You may soar there in imagination for a while, but if the old state remains the nest, the mind will return there when it grows tired. The work is not to forbid the bird from flying. The work is to prepare a new nest, a new inward resting place, until the old branch is no longer home. Many visit the palace, then return to the hut. They enter the state of abundance for a few moments, then return to the old inward poverty. They enter the state of being loved, then return to the old inward abandonment. They enter the state of success, then return to the old inward insignificance. They enter the state of healing, then return to the old inward identification with illness. They visit the palace, admire its rooms, feel its warmth, rest briefly in its dignity, and then, as if they do not belong there, they walk back to the hut and call it reality. But the work is not to visit. The work is to relocate inwardly. You must stop treating the fulfilled state like a splendid place you are allowed to enter only during sacred moments. You must cease standing at the doorway as a guest. You must move in. You must sit there. You must sleep there. You must learn its atmosphere until it no longer feels foreign. You must let the wish fulfilled become the place your consciousness returns to when it is not being forced anywhere else. This is what it means to make fulfillment natural. What feels natural externalizes. The outer world does not long reflect what you merely admire. It reflects what you inwardly accept as normal. What feels strange may be touched. What feels natural is expressed. If abundance feels like a dream, but lack feels like life, the world continues to echo lack. If being loved feels like a beautiful idea, but loneliness feels familiar, the world continues to answer the familiar state. If success feels possible in imagination, but failure feels more believable in the heart's familiarity continues to shape experience. Therefore, the fulfilled state must become more natural than the old state. Do not be discouraged by this. Naturalness is not bestowed by chance. It is cultivated by occupation. A house becomes home because one lives in it. At first, a new dwelling may feel unfamiliar. The sounds are different. The light falls differently through the windows. One may rise in the night and momentarily forget where one is, but after dwelling there long enough, the body learns it. The rooms become known. The silence becomes comforting. The walls become familiar. Soon the old house no longer calls with the same authority. So too with the state of fulfillment. At first, it may seem delicate, almost too good to trust. When you say, "I am already supplied," another voice may answer, "But are you?" When you feel yourself already loved, some old memory may arise to challenge it. When you rest in success, a former disappointment may knock. This is not proof that the fulfilled state is unreal. It is proof that you are moving houses. The old address is still known to the mind. You must continue to inhabit the new one until it becomes the accepted residence of consciousness. A traveler may sleep in a magnificent inn while still speaking of another place as home. He enjoys the comfort of the room. he rests in the fine bed, he looks upon the beautiful furnishings. Yet inwardly, he says, "This is not mine. I will soon return to where I truly belong." Many treat the fulfilled state in this way. They enter it at night, but inwardly consider the old life their true residence. They say, perhaps without words, "This feeling is beautiful, but tomorrow I return to my circumstances," and tomorrow they do, because they never claimed the fulfilled state as home. You must change that inward sentence. When you enter fulfillment, do not say, "How lovely this would be." Say, "This is my dwelling." When you feel relief, do not say, "I wish I could remain here." Say, "This is where I rest now." When you imagine love, health, supply, freedom, or success, do not stand outside the state as a visitor. Enter it as one returning to a rightful place. Say within, "This is mine in consciousness. I belong here." The old state may feel humble, familiar, and painfully convincing. It may even present itself as honesty. It may say, "Do not fool yourself. This is..." But what men call honesty is often only loyalty to memory. It is repeating yesterday and calling repetition truth. The old state is not honest because it is familiar. It is only familiar because it has been repeated. And the new state is not false because it feels unfamiliar. It is simply less practiced. Practice fulfillment inwardly, and it will cease to feel foreign. You must understand that your mind does not return to the old state because it hates you. It returns because it has been trained by repetition. It is like a path through grass. Walk one way enough times, and the path becomes clear. Walk another way enough times, and a new path forms. The mind follows grooves of thought, moods of being, expectations rehearsed again and again. Therefore, do not condemn yourself when you notice the old return. Simply recognize, "This is the old path," then choose the new one again. Every return matters. When fear appears and you gently return to peace, you are moving inwardly into a new dwelling. When waiting appears and you return to possession, you are placing furniture in the new house. When lack appears and you return to supply, you are warming the new rooms. When loneliness appears and you return to the feeling of being cherished, you are hanging new curtains in consciousness, letting another light enter. These images may seem simple, but the principle is profound. You are making the fulfilled state livable, and it must be livable. It must be a state you can rest in, not one you force for a few strained minutes. If your fulfilled state feels like a performance, it will exhaust you. If it feels like a home, it will restore you. This is why the feeling should be natural, gentle, believable in the inward sense. Do not choose a mood so theatrical that you cannot remain in it. Choose the essence of fulfillment. If your desire were done, what would remain? Relief, quiet happiness, security, gratitude, ease. Let these become the furniture of your new inner home. Suppose your desire is financial ease. The fulfilled state is not necessarily wild excitement every hour. It may be the simple feeling that you are provided for. It may be the absence of inward panic. It may be the freedom to breathe. It may be the sense that life is opening rather than closing. If you can make that natural, abundance has begun to feel like home. Suppose your desire is love. The fulfilled state is not constant emotional intoxication. It may be the quiet confidence that you are cherished. It may be an inward warmth. It may be the absence of chasing. It may be the feeling that your heart is safe. If you can dwell there naturally, love has begun to feel like home. Suppose your desire is healing. The fulfilled state is not always a dramatic surge of energy. It may be peace in the body. It may be trust. It may be the inner sentence, "All is being restored." It may be gratitude for wholeness, accepted now. If you can rest there, health has begun to feel like home. Do you see? The fulfilled state becomes natural when you stop treating it like an event and begin treating it like an identity. Not something that happens to you for a moment, but something from which you live. The old state says, "I am waiting." The fulfilled state says, "I have entered." The old state says, "I hope." The fulfilled state says, "I receive." The old state says, "Perhaps one day." The fulfilled state says, "It is already accepted within." The old state says, "This is just who I am." The fulfilled state says, "I choose who I am in consciousness." The mind returns home to what feels natural. Therefore, make the fulfilled state natural, not by strain, but by return, not by forcing belief, but by gentle occupation, not by denying every appearance with nervousness, but by remembering that appearances do not define your inward dwelling. You may acknowledge the old house exists, but you need not live there any longer. You may remember the hut, but you need not sleep in it tonight. You may pass by the former road, but you need not walk it. Tonight, let yourself sense the difference between visiting and dwelling. Visiting fulfillment means you enter briefly and then depart. Dwelling means you allow fulfillment to receive you. You allow it to hold you. You let it become ordinary. You let it lose the shine of impossibility and gain the comfort of truth. You let yourself believe, not merely that it could be, but that it is the state in which you now choose to rest. Perhaps say inwardly, very softly, "This is my home now." Let the words refer not to a physical room, but to the fulfilled state. This is my home now. The peace is my home, the relief is my home, the certainty is my home, the end is my home. I no longer wander the streets of waiting. I no longer return automatically to the house of fear. I am moving inwardly. I am relocating consciousness. I dwell in the state of the wish fulfilled. The old home may call, but you do not have to answer. Fear may call, lack may call, loneliness may call, not yet may call. The old state may knock upon the door of awareness and say, "Come back. You know me, you have always, but now you know something greater." Familiar does not mean true. Repeated does not mean final. The inner home can be changed. The state can be changed. The dwelling place of consciousness can be changed. And this change begins quietly. It begins tonight as the body rests and the mind softens. It begins every time you feel the old state returning and choose not to follow it. It begins every time you enter the end again. It begins every time you say, "No, I live here now," and return to fulfillment. With each return, the new house becomes more inhabited. With each return, the old one loses authority. With each return, fulfillment becomes more natural. What feels natural externalizes. Do not rush that sentence. Let it unfold within you. What feels natural externalizes. If the fulfilled state becomes your normal inner atmosphere, the world must eventually arrange itself in harmony with it. If the state of being loved becomes natural, love must find expression. If the state of being supplied becomes natural, supply must appear. If the state of being chosen becomes natural, selection, favor, and recognition must emerge. The world is compelled to reflect the state most naturally occupied. Therefore, the great work is not to visit the palace once in a while and admire its beauty. The great work is to move in, to sleep there, to wake there, to sit by its inward fire, to know its rooms, to let its atmosphere become the atmosphere of your being. You were not born to stand forever outside the gates of fulfillment. You may enter, you may dwell, you may call it home. So tonight, as sleep approaches, do not ask merely for a beautiful imaginal moment. Ask inwardly for a relocation of identity. Let the fulfilled state become a home you choose. Let it become the place where the mind returns. Let the old state, however familiar, begin to feel less like truth and more like a house you have outgrown. Let fulfillment begin to feel not extravagant, but natural, not distant, but intimate, not borrowed, but yours. And as you drift deeper into rest, hold this gentle knowing. I must make fulfillment feel like home. I do not merely visit the end, I dwell in it. I do not merely imagine possession, I rest as one who has. I do not merely glimpse a new state. And because what feels natural externalizes, the world must in time reflect the home I have chosen within. Now I want you to understand why this hour, this gentle movement from waking into sleep, is one of the most sacred intervals in your entire day. Men often imagine that their greatest opportunity lies in action, in effort, in planning, in trying to force the outer world to yield. They believe the important hours are the hours of movement, decision, conversation, and visible labor. Yet I tell you, one of the most powerful moments in all creation comes when the world is falling silent, when the body is preparing to rest, when the conscious mind begins to loosen its hold, and the inner self becomes more easily impressed by the state you choose to occupy. Sleep is not empty. Sleep is not a pause in creation. Sleep is not time taken away from your assumption. Sleep is the deepening of it. Sleep is the chamber where assumption becomes rooted. What you fall asleep in, you descend into. What you carry across the threshold of night is taken inwardly, beneath the surface of waking thought, where it is no longer merely contemplated, but accepted, received, and woven into the unseen structure of your being. During the day, the conscious mind is active. It argues, it compares, it remembers yesterday, it measures present appearances, it asks how, when, through whom, and by what means. It often stands guard at the gate of imagination, resisting any idea that seems contrary to the visible facts. You may say, I am already supplied, and immediately the waking mind answers, but look at the evidence. You may say, I am already loved, and it replies, but what about this silence, this absence, this memory? You may say, it is done, and the reasoning mind demands proof. But as sleep approaches, that restless guardian grows tired. The sharpness of reason softens. The senses begin to lose their tyranny. The outer room fades. The body grows heavy. The mental noise of the day weakens. And in that sacred interval, the subconscious becomes more open, more receptive, more willing to accept the final mood you offer it. Resistance weakens. The deeper mind opens. The last feeling of the night becomes deeply formative. This is why I have so often spoken of the state akin to sleep. It is not full slumber, nor is it is a twilight condition in which the senses are quiet enough that imagination may be felt more vividly, and the conscious objections are dim enough that the chosen state may sink more deeply. If you would plant an assumption, plant it there. If you would enter the end, enter it there. If you would allow the fulfilled state to become more natural, more rooted, more intimate, then do not squander the threshold of sleep. Do not surrender the night to fear. Do not let the final feeling be dread. Do not let the final inner sentence be, I hope tomorrow is not worse. Do not let the last imaginal act be the replaying of an argument, the rehearsing of loss, the counting of burdens, the expectation of disappointment. Men think these are harmless thoughts because they happen in silence, but silence is precisely where the seed is planted most deeply. If you carry anxiety into sleep, the night receives anxiety. If you carry resentment into sleep, the night receives resentment. If you carry lack into sleep, the night receives lack. And the subconscious, faithful to what it is given, begins to organize the next day from the impression accepted in the dark. Yet the same law, turned wisely, becomes your deliverance. If you carry relief into sleep, the night receives relief. If you carry gratitude into sleep, the night receives gratitude. If you carry the quiet certainty that the desire is already fulfilled, the night receives fulfillment. The night takes the final feeling and carries it into the deep. It takes the last mood and gives it a greater residence within you. It takes the final assumption and begins to make it less like a visitor and more like a home. You have perhaps noticed how powerful a thought can be when it follows you into sleep. A worry repeated before bed may color your dreams and even greet you again upon waking. A sorrow carried into the night may seem heavier the next morning, not because the sorrow became more true, but because you descended into it, you slept in it, you gave it the deep hours. But if this is true of fear, then it is equally true of fulfillment. If a negative state can be strengthened by sleep, a chosen state can be strengthened by sleep. If the night can deepen worry, the night can deepen assurance. If the subconscious can receive anxiety, it can receive peace. So tonight, do not merely think about fulfillment before bed. Sleep inside fulfillment. There is a difference. To think about fulfillment is to stand outside and consider it. To sleep inside fulfillment is to enter the state and let it surround you as the darkness surrounds the room. It is to allow the body to rest while consciousness dwells in possession. It is to let the last movement of your awareness be not longing, but having, not asking, but accepting. Not one day, but now, in consciousness, it is done. You need not labor over this. Sleep is not the hour for mental strain. I do not ask you to force images with a rigid mind or to repeat words until exhaustion. I ask you to become inwardly simple. Choose the end. Feel its essence. Let the state grow soft around you. If your desire were fulfilled, what would quietly be true within you? Would you feel safe? Would you feel grateful? Would you feel loved? Would you feel free? Would you feel that the matter no longer requires your anxious attention? Then let that feeling, even if only faintly at first, become the mood in which you lie down. The body may be tired, but consciousness need not be tired in fear. Let the body rest in peace. Let the heart rest in completion. Let the mind rest in acceptance. Say inwardly, if it helps, it is already done. Say it not as a demand, but as a recognition. It is already done. Let the words fall more slowly each time. It is already done. Let them cease to be words and become atmosphere. Let them become the final emotional climate of the night. What you fall asleep in, you descend into. If you fall asleep in the feeling of being unloved, you descend into that state. If you fall asleep in the feeling of being protected and cherished, you descend into that state. If you fall asleep in scarcity, you descend into scarcity. If you fall asleep in abundance, not merely as money, but as inner sufficiency, as the state of being provided for, you descend into abundance. Sleep does not discriminate. It deepens the chosen impression. Therefore, choose well. The conscious mind often wants to see the whole path before it consents to peace. It says, I will relax when I know how this will happen. But peace is not the consequence of knowing how. Peace is the cause that allows the bridge to form. If you wait for the outer arrangement before you rest, you remain bound to the outer arrangement. But if you rest in the fulfilled state before the arrangement appears, you impress the subconscious with the fact of completion, and life begins to organize itself from that deeper cause. This is not idleness. This is the most profound inward action. Night is a holy field. Do not scatter thorns there. Plant the seed deliberately. The seed is not merely an image. The seed is the state implied by the image. You may imagine a letter of good news, a loving conversation, a healed body, a debt cleared, a peaceful home, a door opened, a desire fulfilled. But the image is only the vessel. The true seed is the mood it awakens: relief, gratitude, security, quiet joy, possession, naturalness. These are the tones that the subconscious receives. These are the impressions that sleep carries inward. Suppose you desire reconciliation. Do not fall asleep, rehearsing absence. Do not repeat what was said, what was withheld, what has not yet changed. Instead, hear inwardly a simple phrase that would be true if love were restored. Feel the warmth of it. Let the heart soften. Then sleep inside that warmth. You are not pretending in the shallow sense. You are entering the creative reality from which outer appearances must follow. Suppose you desire financial peace. Do not lie down counting burdens in the dark. Do not make your bed a courtroom where bills testify against your faith. See instead one little act that implies relief. Perhaps a statement marked paid. Perhaps the quiet knowledge that all is settled. Perhaps the feeling of breathing freely because the pressure has been lifted. Then rest there. Sleep in the state of being supplied. Let the night receive that as your truth. Suppose you desire healing. Do not spend the final moments of the night identifying more deeply with what you wish to leave. Enter the feeling of wholeness. If you cannot feel perfect strength, feel peace in the body. Feel trust. Feel restoration underway. Feel gratitude for the life within you. The subconscious receives the state, and the state begins to impress itself upon the organism and the world. Suppose you desire success, recognition, or the fulfillment of a long-held hope. Do not sleep in the feeling of being overlooked. Do not carry into the night the old sentence, it may never happen. Hear instead the voice of congratulations. Feel the quiet dignity of one whose prayer has ripened. Sleep in that completed atmosphere. Let sleep do what strain cannot. The night takes the final feeling and carries it into the deep. This is why 1 hour before sleep may outweigh many scattered moments during the day. This is why 1 hour before sleep may outweigh many scattered moments during the day. Not because the day is unimportant, but because the night receives without the same resistance. When the mind is drowsy, it is less argumentative. It is less scattered. It is more impressionable. It can be led gently into a new home. A state that felt difficult to maintain in the noise of noon may become tenderly believable in the stillness of midnight. Therefore, use the night wisely. It is your ally. Sleep is the chamber where assumption becomes rooted. You may have touched a new state during the day, but at night you may give it depth. You may have remembered fulfillment for a moment at noon, but at night you may let fulfillment descend below the surface and begin to transform the very sense of self. You may have said, I am already that which I desire to be, while standing among distractions, but at night you may feel it more truly because nothing demands your attention except the inner choice. This is how the fulfilled state becomes more than an exercise. This is how it begins to become identity. Each night you fall asleep in the end. You are not merely having a spiritual moment. You are teaching consciousness a new resting place. You are telling the deeper mind, this is where I live now. This is the state I choose as home. And the subconscious, accepting this, begins to make it easier for you to return there again. The next evening may require less effort. The next morning may preserve a little more of the feeling. The old state may lose a little of its dominance, not through struggle, but through nightly relocation. Do not think that sleep interrupts your assumption. Sleep continues it. If you fall asleep in faith, faith works through the night. If you fall asleep in love, love settles more deeply. If you fall asleep in abundance, abundance becomes less foreign. If you fall asleep in the fulfilled state roots itself. The outer man may seem unconscious, but the inner movement continues. The seed remains alive. The law does not rest. During sleep, you are not absent from creation. You are withdrawn from outer sensation, but the deeper self continues to carry the impression you accepted. You have entrusted it to the inner world. The conscious mind is no longer interfering. The subconscious is no longer argued with. The state remains, and from that state bridges are formed, impulses arise, meanings shift, reactions soften, and the world begins to move in ways you cannot command by effort. This should give you peace. You do not need to solve your life before bed. You do not need to arrange every path before rest. You need only choose what you will descend into. If the desire is fulfilled, what is the feeling? Enter it. Let that be enough. The outer world may still look unfinished, but you do not fall asleep in unfinishedness. You fall asleep in completion. The body rests in the night. Consciousness rests in the answer. Do not surrender the night to fear. Fear has already had enough hours. Anxiety has already spoken often enough. Regret has already rehearsed itself. Let tonight belong to fulfillment. Let tonight be different. Let the final state be one that blesses you. Let the final assumption be one that liberates you. Let the final mood be one you would gladly meet again in the morning. Perhaps say inwardly, I sleep in peace because it is done. Pause. Feel the peace. I sleep in fulfillment because it is already accepted. Pause. Feel the acceptance. I sleep as one who has received. Pause. Let the body soften. I sleep in the state I choose to become natural. Pause. Let the sentence sink below thought. Let it become a gentle orientation of the whole being. And if a contrary thought appears, do not wrestle with it. The night is not for battle. It is for selection. Select again. Return quietly. If fear says, but what if not? Let fulfillment answer without argument. It is done. If the old story presents itself, let the chosen state surround it until it loses shape. You do not need to prove anything to fear. You need only decline to sleep in it. There is great mercy in this practice. The day may have been imperfect. You may have drifted many times. You may have reacted in ways you did not intend. You may have spoken inwardly from the old self. Yet night comes as a sanctuary. Before sleep, you may return. You may cleanse the day by choosing the end again. You may refuse to let your final impression be the worst moment you experienced. You may end in fulfillment, even if the day seemed mixed. The night does not ask where you wandered. It receives where you finally rest. This is why tonight's sleep can install the state more deeply than effort during the day. Effort may strain, sleep receives. Effort may argue, sleep opens. Effort may feel like climbing. Sleep is like sinking into the chosen reality. The conscious mind grows still, resistance weakens, the subconscious opens, and the final mood of the night descends into the deep where it begins to live. If you do this faithfully, the state will not remain a passing visitor. It will become more familiar. The fulfilled state will begin to meet you sooner each night. It will begin to linger longer each morning. It will become easier to return to during the day, because you have slept in it, rested in it, and given it the silent authority of repetition. What was once a fragile thought becomes a mood. What was once a mood becomes a familiar state. What was once a familiar state becomes identity. And identity, by law, externalizes. So tonight, value this descent. Do not see sleep as a small thing. It is one of the holiest acts when understood. To sleep in fear is to abandon the chamber of creation to shadows. To sleep in fulfillment is to enter the chamber with authority. To sleep in the state of the wish fulfilled is to trust the invisible more than the visible. It is to say, without shouting, I know where cause resides. I know what I accept as real. Let the day now fall away. Let the conscious mind grow still. Let resistance weaken. Let the subconscious open. Let the last mood be fulfillment. Let the final feeling be peace. Let the last inner movement be the acceptance that what you desire is already alive in consciousness. What you fall asleep in, you descend into. The night takes the final feeling and carries it into the deep. Do not surrender the night to fear. Sleep is the chamber where assumption becomes rooted. And so tonight, do not merely think of your desire before bed. Sleep inside its fulfillment. Rest there. Let the state hold you. Let the night receive it. Let the deep mind accept it. Let the law work in silence while you sleep. When morning comes, do not believe that the work of the night has ended. Do not wake as though the dream of fulfillment has ended. Do not open your eyes and immediately return to the former self, as though the state you entered before sleep belonged only to the dark and had no right to follow you into the light. The morning is not the enemy of your assumption. The morning is the first threshold upon which you may confirm it. The state impressed before sleep often lingers when you awaken. It may be subtle, it may be delicate, it may be only a faint residue of peace, a softness in the chest, a sense that something within you is less troubled than it was the night before. Do not overlook this. Do not rush past it. This quiet continuation is precious. It is the fulfilled state still resting upon you, like dew upon the grass before the heat of day begins to rise. If you honor it, it deepens. If you neglect it, the old state may return before you have fully noticed what was given. The first waking moments are a doorway. You stand inwardly between two worlds. Behind you is the depth of sleep, where the seed was planted. Before you is the day, with its duties, appearances, conversations, and familiar invitations to return to the old identity. In those first moments, before the world has fully gathered around you, consciousness is soft. The ordinary story has not yet tightened its grip. The mind has not yet resumed all its habits. And there, in that tender interval, you may choose whom you will be. Do not wake as the one who waits. Wake as the one who slept in possession. Before rising, before thinking of obligations, before returning to the ordinary story, inwardly feel it is still done. Let that be the first remembrance. Not what must I face today, not what has changed, not is there proof, but it is still done. The wish fulfilled did not expire during the night. The state you accepted was not a brief illusion. What you entered in consciousness remains available now. Return to it before the day persuades you otherwise. Perhaps you fell asleep feeling loved. When you wake, do not instantly measure the outer world for signs of love. First, return to the inward knowing, I am loved. Let the heart receive it again. Let the body remember the softness of it. Carry that feeling into the first breath of the morning. Perhaps you fell asleep feeling supplied. When you wake, do not immediately remember lack, as though lack were more real than the state you accepted. First, remain still and say inwardly, I am still supplied. Feel, even if faintly, the relief of having. Carry that relief across the threshold of morning. Perhaps you fell asleep feeling healed. When you wake, do not begin by searching the body for evidence against your assumption. First, rest in the state of wholeness. Say inwardly, life is restoring itself in me. I remain in the fulfilled state. Let the body awaken under the blessing of that inner sentence. Perhaps you fell asleep feeling that your desire was already answered. When you wake, do not immediately ask whether it has appeared. Let the first thought be one of continuity. The answer remains. The end is still true in consciousness. I wake as one who has received. In this way, the state is not broken between night and day. It becomes a thread. It carries itself forward. Carry the state across the threshold of morning. This is important because many sleep beautifully and wake carelessly. They fall asleep in the end, but rise from the bed as the old man. Before the feet touch the floor, the old identity has already returned. The mind remembers what it feared yesterday. It remembers what seems unresolved. It remembers the old problem before it remembers the new state. And so the day begins under the rule of a former assumption. Then one wonders why the fulfilled state feels difficult to maintain. It was abandoned at the first waking breath. Do not accuse yourself if this has happened. Simply see it. There is no condemnation here. There is only understanding. The old self has been practiced for so long that it knows how to report for duty at dawn. It stands ready with yesterday's concerns. It says, here I am, let us continue as before. But now you know that you need not employ it again. You may wake differently. You may choose differently. You may refuse to hand the keys of the day back to the old state. When you awaken, remain still for a little while if you can. Do not hurry. There is great power in that brief stillness. The body may wish to move, but consciousness can pause first. Let the eyes remain closed for a moment. Let the breath be quiet. Remember the feeling in which you slept, not every detail of the scene. If it has faded, the feeling is enough. Relief, peace, gratitude, being chosen. being loved, being supplied. Let it return gently, let it settle over you once more. If the night before you slept in the words, "It is done," wake in the echo of those same words, "It is still done." Wake in the echo of those same words, "It is still done." If you slept in the feeling, "I have received," wake in the remembrance, "I still have received" in consciousness. If you slept as one who has entered the end, do not wake as one expelled from it. You are not banished from fulfillment by the sunrise. The day does not remove what consciousness has accepted. Only your own return to the old state can seem to do that. So remain. Wake as the one who slept in possession. There is a certain sacred continuity in this. Night and morning become joined by the same assumption. Sleep is no longer one world and waking another. The fulfilled state begins to bridge them. You fall asleep in it. You wake in it. You carry it forward. You pause during the day and return to it. Then night comes and you enter it again more deeply. This is how the state becomes natural, not by one heroic effort, but by many gentle returns, especially at the thresholds, before sleep and upon waking. The first waking moments matter, because they often determine the direction of the next hours. A man wakes and immediately thinks of what is missing. That first thought becomes a doorway into an entire morning of lack. Another wakes and immediately remembers, "I am already in the end." That first thought becomes a doorway into a day of greater inward steadiness. The outer world may be the same for both at that instant, but they have entered the day from different states, and the state is the cause. Do not allow the ordinary story to reclaim you too quickly. The ordinary story is not necessarily true because it is familiar. It is merely rehearsed. It knows how to present itself as reality. It says, "Remember your condition, remember your delay, remember your problem. Remember that nothing has changed." But if consciousness is the only reality, then what has truly changed is the state you now choose to occupy. The world may appear unchanged for a little while, but you are not required to begin the day in obedience to appearances. You may begin in loyalty to the unseen. Before thinking of obligations, remember being. You are not merely a body beginning a day. You are awareness, and awareness may select its state. Before the tasks gather, before the letters, before the conversations, before the duties, allow yourself to know, "I am still the one who has received." This quiet recognition is not escaping responsibility. It is entering responsibility from power rather than from fear. You will still move, you will still act, you will still meet the day. But the one who meets it will be different. The one who wakes in lack sees the day as a continuation of struggle. The one who wakes in fulfillment sees the day as a bridge unfolding. The one who wakes in fear waits for trouble. The one who wakes in peace expects harmony. The one who wakes in absence searches for signs. The one who wakes in possession receives signs without depending upon them. Again, the difference lies not in the objects of the day, but in the state with which the day is met. Perhaps you say, "But sometimes I awaken abruptly. Sometimes fear comes immediately. Sometimes the old thought is the first thing there." If so, do not despair. The moment you notice it, return. Even if the first second belonged to the old state, the next can belong to the new. Even if anxiety rose before remembrance, remembrance may still come. Do not make a brief drift into a declaration of defeat. Say gently, "I return. It is still done." And let that simple correction guide you back. The fulfilled state should be the first thing you return to when you wake, not because you must perform a rigid ritual, but because morning is an open door. What enters first often sets the atmosphere. If fear enters first, the day may begin in fear. If fulfillment enters first, the day begins under another influence. Therefore, guard the doorway, not with tension, but with tenderness. The first inward act of the day can be one of remembrance. You may imagine for a few moments the same scene you carried into sleep. If you slept in the feeling of hearing good news, hear it again softly. If you slept in the feeling of being embraced, feel that inner warmth again. If you slept in the sense that all is resolved, let the body rest in that resolution before it rises. This need not take long. A moment sincerely occupied may be powerful. The purpose is not duration, but orientation. You are choosing the direction of consciousness before the world begins to demand your attention. Carry the state across the threshold of morning. A threshold is a sacred place because it marks passage. You passed from waking into sleep the night before. Now you pass from sleep into waking. Let the same state accompany you through both crossings. Do not leave fulfillment behind in the night like a cloak forgotten in another room. Wear it into the morning. Let the first step of the day be taken as the one who has already received. Let the first movement of the body be governed by the quiet inward sentence, "It is still done." This is how the old self begins to weaken. The old self depends upon being immediately resumed every morning. It survives because it is repeatedly remembered first. It rises because you identify with it upon waking. But if morning after morning you awaken and choose the fulfilled state instead, the old self loses its privilege. It is no longer the first to speak. It is no longer enthroned automatically. A new identity begins to take the morning watch. And what is identity but the state most often returned to? If every night you sleep in fulfillment and every morning you return to fulfillment, you are creating a powerful continuity of assumption. You are no longer merely practicing at isolated times. You are linking the depths of night with the beginning of day. You are showing consciousness that fulfillment is not a temporary exercise, it is home. It is the place of departure and return. The morning can be very simple. Before the mind rushes outward, inwardly whisper, "It is still done." Feel what those words mean. They mean the night's impression remains. They mean you have not been separated from your assumption by sleep. They mean the unseen reality is not fragile. They mean the desire accepted in consciousness still lives. Let the words be soft. Let them become feeling. Let the feeling become the atmosphere of waking. If you wake and remember a difficulty, place the fulfilled state beside it and choose the fulfilled state as Lord. You need not deny the difficulty. You need not pretend not to see what must be handled, but do not handle it as the old self. Handle it as the one who knows the end is already accepted. There is a great difference between facing the day as one threatened and facing the day as one inwardly secure. The outer act may be similar. The inner cause is entirely different. Wake as the one who slept in possession. The man who sleeps in possession but wakes in lack has broken the thread. The man who sleeps in possession and wakes again in possession strengthens the thread. The thread, strengthened day after day, becomes a rope. The rope becomes a path. The path becomes a natural inward direction. Soon the fulfilled state no longer requires the same deliberate effort to recover. It is waiting close at hand. It is nearer upon waking. It remains longer through the morning. This is how transformation occurs. Let me say again, do not wake as though the dream of fulfillment has ended. The fulfilled state is not a dream in the sense of unreality. It is the creative reality from which outer events take form. The dream is often the old world, the world mistaken for cause. The awakened life is knowing that consciousness precedes appearance. So when you wake, do not return to the dream of lack. Continue in the reality of assumption. Before rising, remain a few moments in inward stillness. Let the breath move naturally. Let the body remember rest. Let consciousness remember fulfillment. Say quietly, "I am still in the end. I am still the one who has received. I am still loved. I am still supplied. I am still chosen. I am still free." Choose the words that match your desire, but let them all carry the same feeling, continuity. There is no rupture between last night and this morning. The state remains, the seed remains, the law remains, the bridge remains, in formation. What you accepted before sleep has not vanished, it has gone deeper. Therefore, meet the day from that depth. Rise as one who knows that something invisible is already moving. Rise as one who does not need immediate proof to remain faithful. Rise as one who carries the answer inwardly before the senses report it outwardly. Perhaps at first you will forget, then remember. Perhaps some mornings will be easier than others. Do not judge, return. One gentle return in the morning can change the tone of a day. One inward sentence spoken before the mind begins its old recitations can prevent hours of wandering. One moment of staying with the fulfilled state can preserve what the night gave you. Honor that moment. The fulfilled state should be the first thing you return to when you wake, because it is the state you have chosen to make home. A man who has moved into a new house does not awaken every morning and pretend he still lives in the former one. He opens his eyes in the new dwelling and recognizes it. So too must you. If fulfillment is now your inward home, wake and recognize it. Do not automatically step back into the old house of fear. Remain where you have chosen to live. Carry the state across the threshold of morning. Carry it gently. Carry it without strain. Carry it before thought scatters. Carry it before the old story gathers force. Carry it as one carries a small lamp from one room into another, preserving the flame from the wind. The flame is the feeling that it is done. Protect it in the first moments of waking. Let it illumine the beginning of the day. Let it remind you who you are before the world tells you who you have been. Let it awaken within you the quiet truth. I did not sleep in fulfillment, only to wake in absence. I wake now as the one who slept in possession. I return to the end. It is still done. Throughout the day, man speaks within himself. He may appear silent to the world, yet inwardly he is never silent for long. Beneath the visible movements of life, there runs a hidden conversation, a quiet stream of inward words, judgments, memories, predictions, explanations, and expectations. And this inner speech is not idle. It reveals the state he occupies. It tells you where he lives in consciousness. It shows whether he is dwelling in fulfillment or returning, unnoticed, to the old world. A man may say outwardly that he believes his desire is fulfilled, but if inwardly he repeats, "It is not here yet," then the state he occupies is not fulfillment, but waiting. A woman may tell herself she has accepted love, but if within she keeps asking, "Why has nothing changed?" then she has not remained in the end. She has returned to the old identity that looks outside for permission to rest. Another may declare that abundance is already his, but if through the day he murmurs inwardly, "I always struggle," then he has let the old self resume its speech. And that speech does not merely describe a state, it sustains it. The voice within is powerful because it is intimate. It is heard continually. It accompanies you in the morning, when the room first comes into focus. It accompanies you while you walk, while you work, while you wait, while you prepare your meals, while you sit alone in the evening. It interprets every event before the world has even given it meaning. It says this is good, or this is bad. It says this proves I am favored, or this proves I am forgotten. It says the bridge is forming, or nothing is happening. Thus, the inner voice continually selects the state from which you live. If the inner voice speaks from lack, then even neutral events become evidence of lack. A delay becomes rejection. Silence becomes abandonment. A temporary inconvenience becomes a prophecy of defeat. The outer world may not have spoken clearly, yet the inner speech rushes in to give it the old meaning. And once the old meaning is accepted, the old state is strengthened. This is why inner speech must be guarded, not nervously, not with fear, but with understanding. For the conversations you carry within are creative. They are assumptions moving in words. Listen to the old speech carefully, and you will know the old state by its phrases. It says, "It is not here yet." It says, "I always struggle." It says, "Nothing has changed." It says, "What if it never comes?" It says, "Perhaps I did something wrong." It says, "Maybe this works for others, but not for me." It says, "I cannot rest until I see proof." These are not harmless passing remarks. They are the language of a consciousness still identified with absence. They are old roots pushing up through the soil. They are the former state trying to speak itself back into authority. And because man often mistakes his inner conversation for realism, he rarely questions it. He thinks, "I am simply being honest." But honesty, when governed by appearances alone, may be nothing more than loyalty to the old world. It is not honesty to repeat limitation forever. It is not wisdom to call fear practical. It is not maturity to rehearse disappointment before disappointment has occurred. If consciousness is the only reality, then true honesty is to acknowledge what state you are actually occupying and to choose consciously whether you will remain there. You must understand that inner speech is one of the clearest ways the old state re-enters. You may fall asleep in the fulfilled end. You may wake and return to it gently. But then, perhaps an hour later, the mind begins to speak from the former identity. It comments on the day. It remembers what has not appeared. It begins to calculate delay. It asks whether the assumption is working. And without a single outward event of significance, you have shifted states. The change began in inner speech. The old self resumed its commentary, and you agreed with it. Therefore, the voice within must learn to speak from the end, not with forced affirmations, not with mental shouting, not with a strained attempt to overpower fear through volume. The fulfilled state is not maintained by inner violence. It is maintained by quiet, natural knowing. When you truly dwell in the end, the inner voice changes tone. It becomes calmer. It no longer asks endlessly, "Where is it?" It begins to say, "Of course it is done." It no longer reads every appearance as a threat. It says, "All is moving in my favor." It no longer identifies as one still waiting outside the door. It says, I am already the one who has received. It no longer bows before temporary appearances. It says the outer world is catching up. These phrases are not meant to be shouted at your mind as though consciousness were an enemy. They are meant to arise from a new state of being. If at first they do not arise naturally, speak them gently and let them lead you inward. Say, of course it is done, and feel what it would mean if that were true. Say, all is moving in my favor, and allow the body to release its defensive tension. Say, I am already the one who has received, and let yourself stand inwardly in possession. Say, the outer world is catching up, and cease treating every visible delay as final judgment. The old inner speech asks questions that deepen uncertainty. What if it never comes? What if I am fooling myself? What if nothing changes? These questions are not neutral. They are invitations to inhabit fear. When you accept them, you begin to feel the state they imply. The heart tightens. The imagination pictures absence. The body responds to a future not yet formed. And in that moment, you have returned to the old state. Do not condemn yourself for noticing this. Simply understand what has happened. You have heard the old voice. Now answer from the new state. If it says, what if it never comes? Answer softly, it is already accepted in consciousness. If it says, nothing has changed, answer, the outer world is catching up. If it says, I always struggle, answer, that is the former story. I now live as one who is supported. If it says, it is not here yet, answer, in consciousness, it is done. And that is the beginning of all appearance. You are not arguing with fear, you are withdrawing consent from it. There is a difference between hearing a thought and agreeing with it. A thought may pass through the mind by habit, like a bird crossing the sky. You do not need to call every thought your own. You do not need to feed it. You do not need to build a nest for it in consciousness. The moment you hear nothing has changed, you may smile inwardly and say, that is the old state speaking. Then return to the fulfilled identity. In doing so, you have not failed. You have practiced mastery. Your inner conversation is either keeping you in the end or pulling you out of it. This is the truth I want you to receive deeply. The conversation itself is like a road. One road leads back to the familiar house of lack. The other leads toward the palace of fulfillment, until, by constant use, that palace becomes your home. Each phrase spoken inwardly is a step. It is not here yet is a step backward, into waiting. It is already done is a step into possession. I always struggle is a step into burden. All is moving in my favor is a step into trust. What if it never comes is a step into doubt. The outer world is catching up is a step into faith. What road are you walking most often within? This is why the inner conversations that occur in ordinary moments matter so much. While washing, walking, preparing food, sitting quietly, waiting for an answer, or lying awake before sleep, the mind often begins to speak freely. These moments reveal the default state. They show whether fulfillment has become natural or whether the old self is still narrating life. Do not fear these moments. Use them, let them become opportunities. When you notice the old commentary, do not become angry with yourself. Simply say inwardly, I return to the end. Perhaps someone has not yet spoken the words you wish to hear. The old voice says, then nothing has changed. But the new voice says, the scene I accepted inwardly is more causative than present silence. The outer world is catching up. Perhaps a letter has not arrived. The old voice says, you see, it is not happening. The new voice says, what has been accepted within must find its form. I remain faithful. Perhaps the body still reports discomfort. The old voice says, you are not healed. The new voice says, I identify with wholeness. The outer expression is adjusting. Perhaps money has not yet appeared. The old voice says, you remain in lack. The new voice says, supply is my state. I do not surrender to appearances. This is not denial. It is spiritual causation, rightly understood. You are not pretending that the visible world is something other than what it appears to be at this moment. You are refusing to make it the final authority. You see the appearance, but you speak from the unseen state you have chosen. You acknowledge the shadow, but you remain loyal to the light. And since consciousness is cause, such loyalty is not fantasy, it is law. The voice within must cease asking for permission from circumstances. It must learn to speak with the dignity of one who knows that the state has already been selected. A man who has received a letter of appointment does not spend the day wondering whether he has been chosen merely because the outer duties have not yet begun. He knows. A woman who has accepted a proposal does not say every 5 minutes, but the ceremony has not happened yet, so perhaps nothing is true. She knows. In the same way, when you have inwardly accepted fulfillment, let your inner speech begin to reflect that acceptance. Not anxiously, but naturally. Of course it is done. This phrase carries peace. It does not push, it does not plead, it rests in completion. All is moving in my favor. This phrase carries trust. It does not demand to see the entire bridge. It recognizes that unseen movement is already taking place. I am already the one who has received. This phrase carries identity. It refuses to speak as one waiting outside the gate. The outer world is catching up. This phrase restores proper order. It reminds you that appearances follow consciousness. They do not govern it. Use such phrases not as empty formulas, but as inward corrections whenever you notice yourself slipping. Let them become your new conversation. Over time, the inner voice will change. At first, perhaps, you must redirect it often. Later, it begins to speak more faithfully without being forced. The new state learns its own language. The fulfilled self develops its own natural inward tone. There is great healing in this, for many have lived with an inward voice that was harsh, frightened, suspicious, and weary. It watched for loss, it prepared for disappointment, it constantly warned, do not hope too much. And though it believed it was protecting you, it was also keeping you bound to the state of expecting pain. Tonight, I invite you to let the inner voice become gentler. Let it become the voice of fulfillment. Let it stop guarding the prison door and begin opening the house of peace. The voice within need not be loud to be powerful. A whisper in consciousness, accepted with feeling, can be more creative than 1,000 forced declarations. If in the middle of the day you pause and inwardly say, "It is done," with real release, that moment has power. If before reacting to a circumstance you remember, "I am already the one who has received," and the body softens, that return has power. If you catch yourself thinking, "Nothing has changed," and gently answer, "The outer world is catching up," you have shifted the state. And because every shift matters, do not underestimate these small inward corrections. Each one weakens the old conversation. Each one strengthens the new one. Each one teaches consciousness that the fulfilled state is now the chosen residence. Your inner speech becomes a form of ongoing revision, not only revising past events, but revising the immediate meaning you give to the present. Instead of translating appearances into defeat, you translate them into bridges. Instead of interpreting delay as denial, you interpret it as movement unseen. Instead of making silence a verdict, you make it a space in which the law is working. This is how peace returns. For unrest often comes not from the appearance itself, but from the meaning your inner speech attaches to it. Two people may encounter the same delay. One says within, "It is failing." The other says, "It is unfolding." One enters fear. The other remains in trust. The outer event is the same in that instant, but the state occupied is different. And because the state is the seed of what follows, their worlds begin to diverge. Therefore, guard not merely your formal imaginal acts, but the commentary that fills the spaces between them. The fulfilled state cannot become natural if the old conversation is allowed to speak without interruption all day. Yet do not become tense about this. Tension itself may become another old state. Be watchful with kindness. Notice, return. Notice again. Return again. The fulfilled self is built by these faithful returns. As you listen tonight, perhaps let the voice within grow still for a moment. Beneath the ceaseless commentary, there is a deeper silence. From that silence, choose one sentence that belongs to the fulfilled state. Perhaps, "Of course it is done." Perhaps, "I am already the one who has received." Perhaps, "All is moving in my favor." Let it be simple. Let it be true in feeling. Let it become a quiet companion you carry into sleep and later into the waking hours. The inner conversation that carried you into the old world need not accompany you forever. A new conversation is possible. A new tone is possible. A new interpretation is possible. And because consciousness is creative, this new inward speech is not cosmetic. It is causative. It sustains the new state. It nourishes the seed planted before sleep. It keeps the mind aligned with the end. It helps fulfillment remain home. Remember this deeply. My inner conversation is either keeping me in the end or pulling me out of it. If it pulls you out, return. If it speaks from fear, answer from fulfillment. If it remembers the old story, remind it of the new state. If it says, "It is not here yet," say, "In consciousness it is done." If it says, I always struggle, say, I live now as one supported by life. If it says, nothing has changed, say, the outer world is catching. If it says, what if it never comes, say, the state has been accepted and the law is faithful. Let the inner voice become worthy of the end you have chosen. Let it no longer speak as a servant of appearances. Let it speak as one who remembers cause. Let it become soft, certain, and inwardly royal. Let it sustain the fulfilled state while you wake, and let it surrender into peace as you sleep. For the word within is living, and the life you experience must, in time, become the echo of the voice you have accepted as your own. There will be moments when the mind drifts. There will be moments when an old fear returns, when the senses reclaim your attention, when a mood rises suddenly and seems to pull you back into the former identity. Perhaps it happens in the morning. Perhaps it happens in the middle of an ordinary hour. Perhaps one small appearance, one memory, one silence, one delay awakens the old state before you are even aware of it. And for a little while, you find yourself thinking as the former self, feeling as the former self, speaking inwardly as the former self. Do not be troubled by this. Drifting is not failure. The assumption is not ruined because the mind wandered. The fulfilled state has not been destroyed because an old thought passed across consciousness. You have not undone every inward act because fear appeared for a moment. A cloud passing before the sun does not extinguish the sun. A wave crossing the sea does not empty the sea. A wandering thought does not become your identity unless you consent to dwell in it. The fall is not final unless you consent to remain there. I tell you this because many sincere students become frightened of their own humanity. They imagine that once they have entered the fulfilled state, no contrary thought must ever arise again. They expect themselves never to drift, never to react, never to feel old fear, never to notice an appearance. And when the mind does what untrained minds often do, when it returns for a moment to an old pattern, they panic. They say, I have spoiled it. I have lost the state. I have failed. But that panic is often more destructive than the original wandering thought. For they turn one passing movement into a new identity. They make a momentary drift into a story of defeat. Do not turn one wandering thought into a new identity. A thought may pass, a mood may rise, an old feeling may visit, but you decide whether it becomes home again. The moment you notice the drift, awakening has already begun. The very recognition, I have left the state, means that another level of consciousness has become present. The one who notices, the one who sees the old state, has already stepped slightly outside of it. Therefore, noticing is not condemnation. Noticing is grace. It is the bell that calls you home. Return quietly, as one returning to their own house. Do not return with violence. Do not return while scolding yourself. Do not return as though you have committed some terrible offense against the law. Return as one who momentarily walked down the wrong road and now gently turns back. Return as one who belongs in fulfillment and has simply remembered the way. Return as one who knows the old state is no longer the chosen dwelling. Perhaps you were resting inwardly in the certainty that you are loved, and then some small absence stirred the old ache. The mind said, you see, nothing has changed. The chest tightened. For a few moments, you re-entered the state of waiting. Then you notice. At that instant, do not condemn yourself. Do not say, I am back. Simply return. Feel again the quiet warmth of being cherished. Say inwardly, I am already loved. The outer world is catching up. Rest there, the return is enough. Perhaps you were living inwardly as one already supplied, and then an obligation appeared. The old fear rose. The mind began to calculate. The body contracted. For a moment, you seem to be the old self again. Then you notice. Do not panic. Return. Breathe. Say, I do not give authority to old appearances. Let the shoulders loosen. Let the feeling of support return. The return is enough. Perhaps you were dwelling in the state of health, and then a sensation in the body called your attention back to the former story. The thought came, what if nothing is changing? Do not be harsh with yourself. Notice. Return. Feel wholeness again, however gently. Say, I identify with restoration. I remain faithful to the fulfilled state. The return is enough. Perhaps you imagined a successful outcome, and then during the day remembered every reason it seems unlikely. The old mind began its argument. The mood shifted toward discouragement. But suddenly you recognize the movement. Do not despair. Return. Say, the end has been accepted. I do not argue with shadows. Let the inward posture become firm and calm again. The return is enough. Mastery is not perfection. Mastery is the gentle. The mind has been trained by years of repetition to move in certain directions. It has practiced fear. It has practiced delay. It has practiced doubt. It has practiced certain interpretations of life. Do not imagine that one night of fulfillment erases every old habit at once. It may begin a great transformation, yes. It may plant a powerful seed, yes. But there is also the gradual re-education of consciousness, the patient retraining of inward movement. And that retraining happens each time you notice and return. Every return strengthens the fulfilled state. Every return teaches consciousness a new home. Each time fear calls and you decline to remain in fear, the old state weakens a little. Each time waiting appears and you return to having, the new state grows more familiar. Each time doubt speaks and you answer from the end, the fulfilled identity becomes easier to occupy. You are not starting over each time. You are building stability through repetition. You are establishing loyalty. You are deepening inward recognition. A person learning a new road may accidentally turn toward the old one several times. Yet every correction increases their knowledge of the new way. After enough returns, the body remembers. The turn becomes natural. So too with consciousness. At first you may return deliberately many times in one day. Later you return sooner. Later still, the old road no longer attracts with the same force. Eventually the fulfilled state becomes so natural that what once required effort begins to feel like instinct. But before that naturalness comes, patience is needed. Compassion is needed. You must not turn the law into a whip against your own back. The law is exact, but it is not cruel. It reflects states. Therefore, if you fall into self-condemnation because you drifted, you are simply occupying another undesirable state. You do not correct fear by adding shame. You do not establish fulfillment by accusing yourself of failure. You return gently. That is wisdom. The fall is not final unless you consent to remain there. If you remain in disappointment for hours, rehearsing it, strengthening it, making it your identity again, then you have consented to remain. But if the disappointment appears and you see it, then softly withdraw your allegiance from it. You have not failed. You have practiced freedom. If fear rises and you follow it all day, it dominates. But if fear rises and you answer it with faith, you have shown the old state that it no longer rules unquestioned. If doubt appears and you call it truth, it gathers strength. If doubt appears and you call it an old echo, it loses authority. A man may slip from a step while climbing a hill. This does not mean the summit is lost. He need only steady himself and continue. A traveler may breathe. This does not mean the light has gone out. He need only keep walking. A child learning to write may form an uneven letter. This does not mean speech is impossible. Practice continues, so do not be troubled by imperfection. Remain faithful to direction. You are learning to live from a new state. You are learning to think from fulfillment rather than toward it. You are learning to meet appearances without surrendering to them. You are learning that the mind can drift without you becoming. This is deep work. Be patient with yourself as you undergo it. There is a tenderness in the way one should return, not carelessly, but tenderly. Suppose a frightened child wanders from the house and is found just beyond the gate. Would a loving mother greet the child with endless condemnation? No, she would gather the child gently, bring them home, and restore their sense of safety. So too with your wandering attention. Do not abuse it. Gather it gently, bring it home to the. Say, here we are again. It is done. We rest here. Return quietly, as one returning to their own house. The fulfilled state is your chosen home. If you drift into fear, you have only stepped outside for a moment. Come back in. If you drift into lack, you have only wandered down an old lane. Turn around. If you drift into waiting, you have only paused near the former gate. Continue inward. The house of fulfillment remains. It has not disappeared, because you looked elsewhere for a little while. Some think they must hold the state with tight concentration every moment, or else it will vanish. But a home is not maintained by staring at its walls all day. A home remains yours even while you move through its rooms naturally. In the same way, the fulfilled state is not kept by rigid mental gripping. It is kept by returning to it whenever you notice you have identified with something else. Over time, it becomes the background of your being, not a forced foreground performance. Do not fear that a single doubt destroys the work of many nights. The seed planted in consciousness is not so fragile. What matters is the direction of loyalty. If doubt visits but you continue to give your loyalty to fulfillment, the seed remains nourished. If an old mood appears but you do not enthrone it, the new state continues to establish itself. If your first response is old, but your chosen response becomes new, transformation is underway. There may be days when you drift often. Let those days not discourage you. They may simply reveal the old state more clearly so that you can release it more consciously. Every noticing is useful. Every return is a victory. Every correction is a form of revision in the present moment. Instead of allowing the day to confirm the old identity, you interrupt the pattern and restore the end. Perhaps you say, but I drift again and again, then return again and again. The number of returns is not a mark of failure, it is the measure of practice. If you return 10 times today, you have chosen the fulfilled state 10 times. If you return 50 times, you have chosen it 50 times. That is not weakness, that is persistence. The old state had many years of repetition. Let the new state now receive repetition too. The mind may drift because it has been accustomed to searching for danger. It may drift because it expects disappointment. It may drift because it has made an identity of vigilance. But the fulfilled state teaches another way. It teaches rest. It teaches that one need not inspect every hour for signs of failure. It teaches that the end, once accepted, remains the end. And so each return is also a release from the exhausting habit of constant inner alarm. Do not panic when the senses reclaim attention. The senses are persuasive. They bring visible forms, audible words, bodily sensations, tangible circumstances. But they are still reports from the outer world, and the outer world is effect, not cause. If they draw you away for a moment, notice and return. Do not say, I believed the senses, therefore all is lost. Say, I remembered cause, and I return. That memory is power. The fulfilled state need not be maintained with emotional intensity. You do not need to feel exalted without interruption. Sometimes returning simply means a quiet inward acknowledgement, it remains done. Sometimes it means a small breath of relief. Sometimes it means refusing to continue a fearful thought. Sometimes it means saying nothing at all, but relaxing the body out of contraction and back into trust. The form of return may vary. The essence is the same. You cease identifying with the old state and re-enter the new. What matters is not that you never wander. What matters is that you no longer build a house where you wander. You no longer turn a passing cloud into the climate of your life. You no longer let one reaction define the day. You no longer conclude that because fear appeared, fear is truth. You see it, you release it, you return. Do not turn one wandering thought into a new identity. If the thought says, perhaps it is not working, do not say, then I am someone for whom the law fails. Return. If the thought says, I am still waiting, do not say, then waiting is my reality. Return. If the thought says, I feel bad, so I must be back at the beginning, do not make that your identity. Return. A mood is not a master unless you bow to it. A thought is not a state unless you dwell in it. A state is not destiny unless you... The fall is not final unless you consent to remain there. These words are mercy. Let them comfort you. They mean you are never imprisoned by a momentary lapse. They mean the door back to fulfillment remains open. They mean no wandering thought has the authority to cancel your chosen end unless you give it that authority. They mean you can begin again in any instant, not because the former moments are erased, but because consciousness is selected now. The creative act is always in the present acceptance. Return quietly as one returning to their own house. Let this become a rhythm. Drift, notice, return, drift, notice, return. At first it may seem repetitive. Later it becomes grace. You learn not to fear the drift because you trust the return. You learn not to dramatize every movement of the mind. You become steadier. The old self loses its power to frighten you merely by appearing. You know now that appearance is not possession. You know that a former state may knock without being admitted. Every return strengthens the fulfilled state. Every return teaches consciousness a new home. Every return is the inner movement by which the old world is left and the new world is chosen again. Therefore, celebrate the return. Do not celebrate the drift, but celebrate the awakening from it. The moment you say, I return, you have chosen freedom over habit. You have chosen creation over reaction. You have chosen the end over appearances. And if tonight, while listening, a thought from the day arises, do not be troubled. Let it appear and pass. If it pulls you for a moment, notice. Then return to the soft feeling that brought you here. Return to the state of fulfillment. Return to the quiet certainty that what is accepted within lives. Return to rest. Return without drama. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to return. Let those words settle deeply. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to return. Not once, but whenever needed. Return in the morning. Return in the quiet pauses of the return when the senses speak. Return when the old state whispers. Return before sleep. Return until returning becomes natural. Return until fulfillment feels like home. Return until the old self grows faint and the new self stands calmly in its place. And now, with all gentleness, let yourself rest in that mercy. If you drift, you may return. If you forget, you may remember. If fear speaks, you may answer from peace. If the old state knocks, you may let it remain outside. The fulfilled state has not abandoned you. It is waiting within, always available, always near. Return quietly, as one returning to their own house. There will come moments when the outer world appears to deny everything you have accepted within. You may have entered the fulfilled state with sincerity. You may have fallen asleep in peace. You may have awakened and returned gently to the end. You may have watched your inner speech with care and chosen again and again to dwell in completion. And yet somewhere in the day, an appearance may arise that seems to say, nothing has changed. The letter has not arrived. The call has not come. The body seems unchanged. The account appears the same. The relationship looks unmoved. And in that moment, the old self tries to reclaim authority. It whispers, see, the world is telling you the truth. Your assumption was only a comfort. Your inner act changed nothing. Return now to what is visible. Return to what can be measured. Return to the old conclusion. But I tell you, do not surrender so quickly to appearances. The outer world is old news. What you now see in the visible world is the crystallization of former states. It is consciousness made object. Yes, but often the consciousness of yesterday, the assumptions of former days, the inner conversations once repeated so often that they took visible shape. The world does not always shift the instant you choose a new state. Just as a ship does not turn the moment the wheel is moved, there is a momentum in appearances. There is an echo of former states. There are shadows that remain for a little while after the light has changed. Therefore, a delayed manifestation is not proof of failure. A contrary fact is not authority over the new state. The absence of immediate evidence does not mean that the unseen has not been accepted. It means only that the visible has not yet caught up to the invisible cause you have chosen. You must learn to distinguish between what is appearing and what is creating. Appearance is effect, assumption is cause. My assumption is cause, appearances are effect. Let that become a law within you. The letter has not arrived. Very well. That is what appears. But do not turn the absence of a letter into the enthronement of doubt. Say inwardly, this is old evidence. I acknowledge it, but I do not enthrone it. My assumption is cause. Appearances are effect. I remain faithful to the unseen reality. The delay of paper is not the denial of consciousness. The unseen work may already be arranging the sender, the message, the circumstances, the perfect hour. The call has not come. Very well, that is what appears. But the old state will try to interpret silence as rejection, as abandonment, as proof that nothing is moving. Do not give it that power. Say inwardly, this is old evidence. I acknowledge it, but I do not enthrone it. The absence of sound is not the absence of movement. My assumption remains cause. I remain faithful to the unseen reality. A call delayed is not a law broken. It is simply an appearance, not yet transformed. The body seems unchanged. Very well, that is what appears. Do not war with it. Do not deny the sensation as though reality requires you to speak foolishly. But do not enthrone it as final. Say within, this is old evidence, I acknowledge it, but I do not enthrone it. My assumption of wholeness is cause. This present appearance is effect. I remain faithful to the unseen reality of restoration. The body may reflect former states, but consciousness is not condemned to repeat them forever. The account appears the same. Very well, that is what appears. But do not make numbers your master. Do not let figures upon a page dictate the state you occupy. Say, this is old evidence. I acknowledge it, but I do not enthrone it. My assumption is cause. Appearances are effect. I remain faithful to the unseen reality of supply. The account may show yesterday's concept of self. You are not required to become yesterday again, because yesterday still has a visible shadow. The relationship looks unmoved. Very well. That is what appears. But appearances in human affairs are often delayed reflections of deep inner patterns. Do not rush to conclude that nothing has changed simply because the eyes cannot yet report it. Say, this is old evidence. I acknowledge it, but I do not enthrone it. My assumption is cause. The outer relationship is effect. I remain faithful to the unseen reality of harmony, love, and fulfillment. The bridge may be forming in silence. Hearts may be turning by ways unseen. Circumstances may be arranging themselves beyond your present view. You must understand that appearances are persuasive because they seem solid, they engage the senses, they place before you something you can point to and say, there it is. But solidity is not supremacy. A stone is solid, yet it was once molten. A tree is visible, yet it was once hidden in seed. A house stands in space, yet it was once only an inward image in the mind of a builder. The visible may seem more real because it is present to the senses, but the invisible is prior. The unseen is the parent of the seen. Therefore, do not let the child dictate to the parent. Do not let effect command cause. Do not let the shadow tell the light what it is permitted to be. You may see the old world without surrendering to it. You may acknowledge the present appearance without making it final. You may say, yes, this is before me, but it is not above me. It is not the creative power. It is the visible residue of former states. I choose now the state that will shape what follows. This is old evidence. I acknowledge it, but I do not enthrone it. My assumption is cause. Appearances are effect. I remain faithful to the unseen reality. These inward responses are not empty slogans. They are acts of spiritual order. They restore hierarchy. They place consciousness first and appearance second. They prevent the old world from seducing you back into the old state. They allow you to stand in the midst of contradiction without becoming the contradiction. One of the greatest tests of faith comes not when you imagine beautifully in solitude, but when the visible world presents a contrary report and asks whether you will accept it as final. A person may feel rich in imagination while resting quietly at night, but when a bill arrives, do they remain in the state of supply? A person may feel loved in silence, but when no message appears, do they remain in the state of being cherished? A person may feel healed in prayer, but when the body still reports discomfort, do they remain faithful to wholeness? This is where assumption becomes strength. This is where the unseen is honored above the seen. Do not mistake this for stubborn denial. I do not ask you to pretend that an appearance is not there. I ask you not to enthrone it. There is a difference. To deny foolishly is to close the eyes and say, I see nothing. To remain faithful is to open the eyes and say, I see this, but I know it is effect, not cause. I will not build my identity upon it. A man may look upon a barren field in winter and still know spring is coming because he understands the order of seasons. You may look upon an outer appearance that has not yet changed and still know the state you have accepted is taking root because you understand the order of consciousness. The world you see today may belong to yesterday's consciousness. This sentence must become clear. If yesterday you feared, worried, doubted, rehearsed absence and lived as the old self, do not be surprised if some appearance today bears the imprint of that state, but neither should you bow before it as though it has the right to command tomorrow. You have already begun to choose differently. Today's visible fact may be yesterday's harvest, not tomorrow's seed. Do not confuse harvest with cause. You can receive an old harvest and still plant a new field. Suppose a farmer sowed thorny seed in one season and later learned to sow grain. When the old thorns appear, he does not say, the grain is impossible. He knows he is seeing the result of former planting. He clears what must be cleared, but he does not abandon the new seed. He does not dig up the grain because thorns from an earlier sowing still show themselves. In the same way, when a contrary fact appears, handle what must be handled, but do not inwardly return to the former state. Let the appearance be acknowledged without becoming your identity. A delayed manifestation is not proof of failure. Delay may simply mean the bridge of incidents is still arranging itself. Delay may mean conditions are aligning in ways you cannot see. Delay may mean the old structure is loosening while the new one takes form. Delay may even be protecting the fullness of fulfillment from appearing in a way too small or too limited. The conscious mind sees delay and often names it denial. The awakened mind sees delay and says the outer world is old news. The unseen is still working. Do not become impatient with the shadow. Change the light. remain faithful to the new state. If the visible contradicts you today, return to the assumption tonight. If a circumstance unsettles you, revise its meaning inwardly. If the day seems to speak the language of the old state, do not let your night echo it. Before sleep, cleanse the impression. Return to the end. Say, I saw old evidence today, but I did not enthrone it. I remain faithful to the unseen reality. In this way, the day does not dictate the night, and the night prepares a new day. You may wonder how long one must remain faithful when appearances persist. I tell you, remain faithful until the state becomes natural, not with strain, not with inward war, but with loyalty. If you choose the fulfilled state only when appearances agree, then appearances remain your master. But if you choose it while appearances disagree, you are placing cause where cause belongs. You are declaring inwardly that consciousness is the only reality, and that the visible world must eventually conform to the state most deeply accepted. There is a majesty in this kind of faith. It is not loud, it is not theatrical, it is quiet. It does not need to explain itself to every passing doubt. It stands, a contrary fact appears, and it says, I acknowledge you, but I do not enthrone you. A delay appears, and it says, you are not my master. An absence appears, and it says, you are not the final word. It returns, again and again, to the unseen reality chosen in imagination. The world may seem unmoved, but worlds often move inwardly before they move outwardly. A door may be opening on the far side before you hear the hinge. A person may be softening before they speak. A circumstance may be rearranging before it becomes visible. The subconscious does not announce each step of the bridge. It works in silence. Therefore, silence is not inactivity. It is often preparation. This is old evidence. I acknowledge it, but I do not enthrone it. My assumption is cause. Appearances are effect. I remain faithful to the unseen reality. Let these sentences become your inward posture in the face of contradiction. Do not rush through them. Feel the order they restore. The first sentence separates you from the appearance. This is old evidence. The second sentence grants you maturity. I acknowledge it, but I do not enthrone it. The third sentence returns power to consciousness. My assumption is cause. Appearances are effect. The fourth sentence establishes loyalty. I remain faithful to the unseen reality. Now see how different this is from the old response. The old response says, the letter has not arrived, so nothing is working. The new response says, this is old evidence. I remain in the end. The old response says, the call has not come, so I am forgotten. The new response says, silence is not authority. I am still chosen. The old response says, the body appears unchanged, so healing is absent. The new response says, appearance is effect. I identify with wholeness. The old response says, the account is the same, so supply is not mine. The new response says, I am supplied in consciousness, and the outer world is adjusting. The old response says, the relationship looks unmoved, so love has failed. The new response says, harmony is accepted within. I remain faithful. What you do in these moments matters greatly. If you accept the appearance as final, you return to the old state and strengthen it. If you acknowledge the appearance but remain inwardly aligned with fulfillment, you preserve the new state and allow it to deepen. These moments are not interruptions to your practice. They are the proving ground of your practice. They are the opportunities by which faith becomes steadier, assumption becomes firmer, and consciousness ceases to be tossed about by every visible report. Again, I say, you can see the old world without surrendering to it. This is freedom. You do not need to close your eyes to life. You do not need to pretend nothing exists. You simply refuse to let what exists visibly dictate what shall exist. You refuse to make a current appearance more powerful than a chosen state. You refuse to bow before what is seen when you know the unseen is its cause. As you rest tonight, let your heart be comforted. Perhaps today there was some contrary evidence. Perhaps something seemed late. Perhaps something did not appear. Perhaps you felt the old fear rise because the outer world had not yet shifted. Let that now become lighter. Say inwardly, I saw old evidence, but I do not carry it into sleep. I return to the fulfilled state. I acknowledge what appeared, but I do not enthrone it. My assumption is cause. Appearances are effect. I remain faithful to the unseen reality. Let the body relax around that truth. Let the shoulders release. Let the jaw soften. Let the breath deepen. The visible world is not your enemy. It is simply the current reflection of consciousness. And because consciousness may be chosen anew, reflection may change. You are not trapped by what appears. You are only invited to decide whether you will accept it as final. Tonight, choose differently. See the old world, but do not surrender to it. Remain in the end. Remain in the unseen. Remain faithful. There is a point at which many sincere seekers turn the fulfilled state into another burden. They hear that they must remain faithful to the end, and so they begin to watch themselves with tension. They inspect every thought. They fear every movement of the mind. They believe that if one contrary idea passes through consciousness, all is lost. They begin to work inwardly with clenched teeth, attempting to hold fulfillment as one might hold a heavy door shut against a storm. But I tell you, this is not the way. You are not asked to strain. You are asked to dwell. The fulfilled state is not maintained by exhaustion. It is not preserved by mental panic. It is not sustained by an anxious effort to control every passing thought. It is not a prison of vigilance. It is an inward dwelling place. It is a chosen home. It is the state you become familiar with, the atmosphere you return to, the identity you accept so often that eventually it begins to feel like the most natural thing in the world. Many confuse intensity with faith. They think that because they are mentally working hard, something powerful must be happening. They repeat phrases with force. They try to generate emotion by pressure. They watch the mind every moment with nervous suspicion. They attempt to crush every doubt as though the law were fragile and easily broken. Yet beneath all this activity, there is often fear. Fear that it will not work. Fear that one missed thought will undo the desire. Fear that fulfillment must be manually maintained every second, or else it will disappear. That fear is not the fulfilled state. The state is not carried by effort alone, but by acceptance. Consider a man who lives in his own house. He does not wake every morning repeating feverishly, "This is my house, this is my house, this is my house," lest the walls vanish. He does not inspect every room with panic to confirm his ownership. He simply lives there. He may leave and return. He may think of other things. He may rest, work, laugh, or sleep. Yet beneath all activity, there is the unforced knowing, "This is mine." Ownership has become natural. So too with the fulfilled state. Return, if you desire love, you are not required to spend every waking moment mentally shouting, "I am loved, I am loved, I am loved," while secretly feeling terrified of abandonment. The fulfilled state of love is quieter. It is the settled inward knowing, "I am cherished, I am chosen, I am secure." This knowing may not occupy the surface of the mind every second, but it becomes the deeper identity from which your thoughts arise. It is not performance, it is embodiment. If you desire abundance, you need not monitor every word as though one careless phrase will destroy all possibility. You need to become inwardly familiar with being supplied. You need to dwell more often in ease than in pressure, more often in trust than in dread, more often in the feeling that life provides than in the expectation that life withholds. The state of abundance is not theatrical excitement, it is quiet sufficiency. If you desire healing, you need not force yourself into a constant spectacle of positivity. Fulfillment must become natural, not theatrical. The state of wholeness may be gentle. It may be a sense of peace in the body. It may be a soft inner agreement with restoration. It may be the refusal to let every sensation drag you back into fear. You do not need to perform health. You need to dwell increasingly in the consciousness of wholeness. There is a great difference between forcing and resting. Forcing is tense. Resting is steady. Forcing says, "I must hold this together by my own mental effort." Resting says, "I have entered the state and I return whenever I drift." Forcing arises from insecurity. Resting arises from acceptance. Forcing has urgency in it. Resting has faith. When you force, you are often still identified with not having. You strive to become. You push to arrive. You struggle to maintain what you secretly feel is not yet yours. But when you dwell, you have accepted inwardly that the desire is already fulfilled. You are not straining to create reality from a place of absence. You are living from the state of having. The action may be subtle, but the difference is immense. The man who tries hard to feel rich may still feel poor, trying to escape poverty. The woman who anxiously tries to feel loved may still feel unloved, trying to manufacture reassurance. The person who obsessively checks whether they are in the state may still be in the state of uncertainty. The form appears spiritual, but the root remains fear. This is why I say fulfillment must become natural, not theatrical. A theatrical state is maintained for display. A natural state is inhabited. A theatrical state tries to convince. A natural state simply is. A theatrical state demands constant performance. A natural state remains even in silence. One may act fulfilled outwardly while inwardly trembling, but the law does not respond to the performance, it responds to the state. Better a quiet moment of genuine possession than an hour of strained display. You do not need to create a grand emotional storm every time you return to the wish fulfilled. The subconscious is not impressed by noise, it is impressed by acceptance. Sometimes the deepest assumption is almost wordless. A breath softens, the heart settles, the mind no longer reaches. A simple inward recognition appears. Yes, it is done. That may be far more powerful than frantic repetition. The state is not carried by effort alone, but by acceptance. Acceptance means you stop arguing inwardly with the possibility of fulfillment. Acceptance means you allow yourself to live from the desire as though it were already true in consciousness. Acceptance means you no longer treat the desired state as foreign. You let it belong to you. You permit yourself to rest there. You may ask, but if I do not monitor every thought, will I not fall back completely? At first, some awareness is needed. You have learned already that drifting is natural and returning is mastery. But awareness is not obsession. Awareness is gentle noticing. Obsession is fear, dressed as discipline. Awareness says, I have wandered. I return. Obsession says, what if I wander? What if I fail? What if this thought ruins everything? One restores you, the other exhausts you. Choose the dominant state, not the impossible task of controlling every thought. Thoughts arise from habit, memory, sensation, and suggestion. Many pass without becoming anything. The creative power lies not in every isolated thought, but in the state you consent to occupy, the mood you repeatedly return to, the identity you make your own. A fearful thought may appear. If you notice it and return to trust, the dominant state remains trust. A memory may arise. If you refuse to build a house within it, your chosen home remains fulfillment. A contrary image may flash through the mind. If you do not enthrone it, it does not become your ruling state. The man who attempts to control every thought soon becomes a servant of thought. He lives watching the gate with such anxiety that he has forgotten the king within. He fears intrusion more than he trusts dominion. But the awakened man knows that the chosen state is larger than a passing thought. He knows that consciousness is not a fragile glass to be shattered by every stray mental pebble. He knows that the true work is occupancy. Occupancy means, where do I dwell most naturally? Occupancy means, what state do I repeatedly call home? Occupancy means, when I discover myself in fear, do I stay there or do I return? Occupancy means, am I practicing lack through my assumptions or am I practicing fulfillment through my inner agreement? Occupancy concerns the ruling atmosphere, not every temporary fluctuation. Think of weather and climate. A brief storm does not define the climate of a land. A cloudy afternoon does not mean the sun has abandoned the earth. In the same way, a moment of doubt does not define your state if your deeper dwelling is faith. A passing mood does not name your identity if you return to the fulfilled self. What matters is not that no clouds arise, but that you do not call every cloud your sky. You are not asked to strain. You are asked to dwell. Dwell in being loved. Dwell in being supplied. Dwell in being chosen. Dwell in being free. Dwell in being whole. Dwell in being the one for whom the desired outcome has already been accepted. Let the state become familiar by repetition, not dramatic by force. Let it deepen by returning, not by struggling. Let it become restful. There is such relief in this teaching when truly understood. Many have made manifestation into another form of labor. They have turned inward life into a field of constant correction, constant checking, constant fear of doing it wrong. But the law is not meant to make you more anxious. It is meant to free you from bondage to appearances. It is meant to teach you that cause is within. It is meant to show you that you may rest in the chosen state instead of running after shadows. If your practice leaves you more frightened than before, pause and return to simplicity. The wish fulfilled does not feel like terror. It feels like possession. It may be quiet possession, but possession nonetheless. If you are straining intensely, ask yourself, what would I feel if I no longer had to try? Perhaps that question will guide you closer to fulfillment than another hour of force. What would you feel if the desire were done? You would not be frantically monitoring yourself. You would not be begging every thought to cooperate. You would not be examining each moment for danger. You would rest more. You would breathe more deeply. You would move with greater inward ease. Therefore, if you wish to live from the end, let the quality of your inner life begin to resemble one who has arrived. The one who has received does not perform receiving, he receives. The one who is loved does not constantly labor to prove love exists. She rests in being cherished. The one who is supplied does not make a spectacle of abundance. He lives from sufficiency. The one who is healed does not spend every second forcing a healed identity. He learns to feel whole more naturally than afraid. Fulfillment is embodied, not staged. You may still use phrases. You may still return to an imaginal scene. You may still revise the day. These things are valuable, but let them serve occupancy, not anxiety. Use a phrase to re-enter the state, not to punish yourself for having left it. Use an imaginal act to dwell in fulfillment, not to fight reality with desperation. Use revision to restore peace, not to obsess over perfection. Let all practices lead toward naturalness. Fulfillment must become natural, not theatrical. Naturalness is the mark of absorption. When a state becomes natural, it no longer feels like a costume. It feels like self. At first, you may need to choose it deliberately. Later, you return to it with greater ease. Eventually, it begins to choose itself because you have occupied it so faithfully. You no longer say, I am trying to be the one who has. You simply notice, I think, feel, and respond as the one who has. This is where real transformation occurs, not when you have exhausted yourself attempting to never drift, but when the fulfilled state becomes more restful than the old state. There comes a moment when returning to worry feels burdensome, while resting in fulfillment feels like relief. There comes a moment when the old state feels foreign, almost strange, and the new state feels like your own soul remembering itself. That is the fruit of occupancy. Suppose you have spent years worrying about a desire. At first, peace may feel unfamiliar. You may even mistrust it. The mind may say, if I stop worrying, perhaps I am neglecting the problem. But worry has not been your protector. It has been an old state. It has kept you rehearsing absence. To release worry is not to abandon your desire. It is to enter the state in which the desire is already fulfilled. Peace is not passivity. Peace is agreement with the end. Suppose you have spent years identifying with striving. At first, receiving may feel almost uncomfortable. The mind may say, I must do more, I must make it happen. But inwardly forcing the world is not the same as assuming the end. There are times for outward action, certainly, but action from fulfillment feels different from action from lack. One is guided, the other is driven. One arises naturally, the other compulsively. The state is the true work, because the state determines the quality of all action. You may ask how to know whether you are forcing or dwelling. Ask how the body feels. Force tightens, dwelling softens. Force chases, dwelling settles. Force trembles before appearances. Dwelling sees appearances without surrendering to them. Force demands immediate proof. Dwelling trusts the bridge. Force becomes mentally loud. Dwelling may be quiet. There is a softness in genuine assumption, not weakness, but softness. A settled heart, a mind less inclined to argue, a willingness to leave the seed in the soil, a readiness to let the law work without hovering over it. This softness is often the evidence that you are no longer trying to become, but resting in being. You are not asked to strain, you are asked to dwell. The state is not carried by effort alone, but by acceptance. Fulfillment must become natural, not theatrical. Let these three truths untie something within you. You do not need to exhaust yourself tonight. You need to enter. You do not need to capture every thought. You need to choose the state you will return to. You do not need to become a watchman tormented by the fear of failure. You need to become a dweller in fulfillment. You need to let the wish fulfilled be more and more familiar, until familiarity gives birth to naturalness, and naturalness gives birth to expression. As you listen now, perhaps release the strain of trying to hold everything perfectly. Let the body rest more fully. Let the mind unclench. Say inwardly, I am not forcing, I am dwelling. Feel the difference. I am not wrestling, I am accepting. Feel the relief. I am not performing fulfillment, I am becoming familiar with it. Let that sentence settle like warm light over the mind. The fulfilled state does not ask you to stand at attention all night. It invites you to sleep within it. It does not demand that you interrogate every mental movement. It invites you to return whenever you notice you have wandered. It does not insist upon outward drama. It invites inward occupation. It does not burden you, it frees you. Tonight, therefore, choose rest over strain. Choose occupancy over obsession. Choose acceptance over force. Let the state of fulfillment become the quiet room in which you lie down. Let it become the bed beneath thought. Let it become the atmosphere around your breathing. Let it become so gentle that sleep can carry it without disturbance. And remember, staying in the fulfilled state can become restful, not exhausting. It can become the relief of no longer living from lack. It can become the peace of no longer begging appearances for permission to believe. It can become the naturalness of inward possession. You are not asked to strain, you are asked to dwell. So dwell now, quietly, in the state that is already yours in consciousness. There are gentle moments scattered throughout the day, small openings in the ordinary movement of life, when consciousness may be gathered back into the state you have chosen. These moments do not announce themselves with thunder. They come quietly. They come when the mind pauses, when the body changes direction, when one activity ends and another has not yet begun. If you learn to recognize these little thresholds, you will discover that the fulfilled state need not be left behind in the morning and rediscovered only at night. It can be returned to again and again, simply, softly, without strain. Upon waking, as I have already told you, the first return is precious. Before rising, before the concerns of the day assemble themselves, before the old identity speaks its habitual word, remain still and ask inwardly, where am I dwelling now? Not with anxiety, not as one searching for fault, simply with awareness. Where am I dwelling now? And if you sense that the old state has begun to gather, do not condemn yourself. Return at once. Feel the end. Whisper inwardly, it is still done. Remember the new identity. Rest for a few breaths in fulfillment. Those few breaths matter. They set the tone. They remind consciousness of its chosen home. They declare, without noise, that the day will not begin under the rule of waiting. The day will begin from possession. Then, as the hours unfold, there will be other pauses. Before a meal, for instance, when the body settles and the hands become still, there is a natural quieting. One may take that little interval and ask inwardly, am I the one who has, or the one who waits? Do not make the moment heavy. Do not turn it into ceremony. Let it remain simple. If you find yourself inwardly rushing, fearing, calculating, or living from not yet, return. Breathe. Feel the end for a moment. Say inwardly, I am already the one who has received. Let the phrase awaken the state, then continue naturally. When crossing a doorway, there is also an opportunity. A doorway is a symbol of passage. You leave one room and enter another. Let it remind you that you may also leave one state and enter another. Perhaps you have been caught in old inner speech. Perhaps some appearance drew you back into concern. Then, as you pass from one room to the next, gently ask, have I returned to the old state? If the answer is yes, do not carry it through. Let the doorway become a silent decision. Return before you cross. Say within, I enter as the fulfilled self. Feel, if only for a breath, the ease of that identity. Then move on. There is power in such small recognitions, not because the doorway itself has magic, but because you are using natural moments to restore consciousness. You are interrupting unconscious drift. You are refusing to let hours pass in the old state simply because no formal practice has begun. You are bringing the law into the ordinary movements of the day. When sitting quietly, whether by a window, in a chair, while waiting, or in a moment when no one asks anything of you, let that stillness become fruitful. The mind may otherwise fill silence with worry. It may revisit an old problem, re-examine a delay, replay a conversation, or rehearse the absence of what is desired. But you need not surrender quiet moments to old stories. Use them as places of return. Ask, where am I dwelling now? If the answer is not the fulfilled state, gently turn. Feel the end. Repeat one inward phrase that belongs to your new identity. Perhaps all is moving in my favor. Perhaps I rest in the wish fulfilled. Perhaps the outer world is catching up. Let the words lead you back into feeling. You may discover that these pauses are enough to restore the whole current of the day. A mind that had been drifting toward fear may, with one sincere inward return, recover its peace. A body that had tightened under old expectation may soften again. A mood that had begun to darken may become luminous with quiet faith. Do not underestimate what can happen in a few breaths when those breaths are filled with assumption. Before sleep, of course, there is the grand return, the sacred return, the moment in which the whole day is surrendered into the state you choose to impress most deeply. But the return before sleep is strengthened by every return that preceded it. If throughout the day you remembered the fulfilled state in little intervals, then the night will feel less like a rescue and more like a continuation. You will not be attempting to recover a state entirely lost. You will be deepening a state already revisited many times. The day and the night will begin to support one another, and beyond these particular moments, there is an even more subtle opportunity, whenever the mind becomes aware of itself. Sometimes, quite suddenly, you notice that you are thinking. You catch the inner voice moving. You observe a mood that had gone unnoticed. You become aware of your own awareness. That very awakening is a doorway. In such a moment, ask gently, where am I dwelling now? This question has the power to return you to yourself. It interrupts mechanical living. It invites conscious selection. If the answer is, I am dwelling in fear, then return. If the answer is, I am dwelling in delay, then return. If the answer is, I am dwelling in resentment, then return. If the answer is, I am dwelling in the feeling that nothing has changed, then return. Not violently, not shamefully, simply return. Feel the end. Repeat one inward phrase. Remember the new identity. Rest for a few breaths in fulfillment. A few breaths may seem insignificant to the rational mind, yet the rational mind measures by outward quantity, while consciousness is moved by inward quality. One breath deeply filled with the feeling of fulfillment may accomplish more inwardly than many minutes of distracted repetition. Do not despise brief returns. A candle relit many times fills the room with light just as truly as one that has burned without interruption. The purpose is not to prove that you never drifted. The purpose is to keep choosing light. You may say within, upon waking, it is still done. Before a meal, I am already supplied. While crossing a doorway, I enter as the fulfilled self. When sitting quietly, all is moving in my favor. Before sleep, I rest in the wish fulfilled. Whenever the mind awakens to itself, where am I dwelling now? These phrases are not rules imposed from outside. They are small anchors. They are reminders of the state you have chosen to inhabit. And yet, do not become mechanical. The phrase itself is not the power. The phrase is a handle by which you take hold of the state. If one phrase no longer awakens feeling, choose another that does. If it is done, feels sacred, use it. If I am already the one who has received returns you to possession, use it. If the outer world is catching up, restores calm when appearances trouble you, use it. Let the inner sentence serve the living feeling. The whole purpose is to return from unconsciousness to assumption, from habit to choice, from the old state to the fulfilled state. These natural pauses help you do that without burdening the day. They do not demand that you withdraw from life. They teach you to live consciously within life. They show you that fulfillment is not confined to the bed at night, nor to some special hour of practice. Fulfillment may be remembered in the kitchen, at the table, in the passage from one room to another, during a quiet wait, in the stillness before sleep, and in any moment when you awaken enough to choose again. This is how the state begins to thread itself through the day, not through relentless effort, but through gentle recurrence. The mind learns that it need not wander for long. The old state learns that its reign will be interrupted. The new state gains ground not only in grand imaginal scenes, but in countless small acts of remembrance. These are like drops of water wearing a new channel into the earth. Each one seems slight. Together they change the course of the stream. Imagine what happens over days and weeks when upon waking you return. Before meals you return. At doorways you return. In quiet sitting you return. Before sleep you return. Whenever awareness rises you return. The fulfilled state is no longer an occasional guest. It becomes woven into the fabric of life. It begins to appear in the spaces that were once occupied by worry. It begins to speak in the inner moments where fear once spoke first. It begins to become familiar. And what becomes familiar becomes natural. What becomes natural externalizes. Perhaps you desire to live as one already loved. Then let these pauses become opportunities to feel cherished. Upon waking, I am loved. Before a meal, I receive life with gratitude. At a doorway, I enter as one who is chosen. In quiet moments, I am never outside love. Before sleep, I rest in the knowledge that I am deeply received. Soon the whole day begins to feel less like waiting for love and more like living within it. Perhaps you desire financial ease, Upon waking, I am already supplied. Before a meal, provision surrounds me. At a doorway, I enter in abundance. In quiet moments, all is arranging itself for my good. Before sleep, I rest as one whose needs are met. Soon the day no longer belongs so completely to calculation and fear. It begins to carry the fragrance of sufficiency. Perhaps you desire healing. Upon waking, life is active in me. Before a meal, I receive strength. At a doorway, I enter in wholeness. In quiet moments, my body responds to the state of peace. Before sleep, I rest in restoration. These phrases are not empty incantations, they are ways of leading consciousness back into the chosen state. The great beauty of this practice is that it respects the rhythm of life. It does not ask you to abandon your duties. It does not ask you to sit apart from the world all day in formal contemplation. It asks you to awaken within ordinary life. It asks you to use the natural still points already present. It asks you to return gently rather than drift endlessly. It asks you to make the fulfilled state not a burden, but a companion. Let every pause become a bell. Let every doorway become a reminder. Let every meal become a moment of recollection. Let every quiet chair become a sanctuary. Let every waking become a return. Let every sleep become a sealing of the state. Then you will discover that your day is not a threat to your assumption. Your day becomes the field in which assumption is repeatedly chosen. There will still be times when you forget. There will still be moments when hours pass before you realize you have wandered. Do not be troubled. The next moment of awareness is enough. Whenever the mind becomes aware of itself, that is the moment to return. There is no need to mourn the time spent away. Return now. The present choice is always alive. Ask inwardly, where am I dwelling now? Let the answer come honestly. Ask, am I the one who has or the one who waits? Let the distinction become clear. Ask, have I returned to the old state? If so, do not despair. Simply return. Feel the end. Repeat one inward phrase. Remember the new identity. Rest for a few breaths in fulfillment. This is simple, and because it is simple, it can be lived. Because it can be lived, it can be repeated. Because it can be repeated, it can become natural. Because it becomes natural, it can become the state from which your world is formed. So do not say, I have no way to remain faithful during the day. You have many. They are already woven into your hours. Morning gives you one. Meals give you another. Doorways give you another. Doorways give you another. Quiet moments give you another. Evening gives you another. Awareness itself gives you one. Every time it dawns, use them gently. Use them faithfully. Use them not as obligations, but as invitations to return home. And as you rest now, let even this moment become one such return. Ask quietly, where am I dwelling now? Let the answer be, I dwell in the fulfilled state. Ask, am I the one who has or the one who waits? Let the answer be, I am the one who has received in consciousness. Ask, have I returned to the old state? Let the answer be, no, I return now to the end. Then breathe softly, feel the wish fulfilled. Remember who you are. Rest for a few moments in that gentle inward possession. This is enough. This is how the state is maintained. This is how the day becomes an ally of fulfillment. Now let the day fall away completely. Let every conversation become distant. Let every obligation move gently into the background, as though it belonged to another room, another hour, another self. You do not need to carry the weight of the day any further. You have come now to the quiet threshold, where the outer world fades, where the senses soften, where imagination becomes tender and receptive, where the deep mind opens like rich soil beneath the evening sky. Let the body become still. Let the jaw unclench. Let the shoulders drop, slowly, gently, as though a burden you no longer need has slipped away without effort. Let the arms grow heavy. Let the hands relax. Let the chest soften. Let the stomach release its tension. Let the legs surrender their work. Let the whole body understand that it is safe now to rest. Nothing is required of you in this moment. There is nowhere to go. There is nothing to chase. There is nothing to prove. You are not here to wrestle life into submission. You are here to enter the state of fulfillment and allow it to receive you. You are here to rest in the end. You are here to fall asleep, not as one who still waits, but as one who has already inwardly received. Take a slow, easy breath. Do not force it. Let it arrive by itself. Let it leave by itself. As it leave by itself. As it leaves, imagine that some remnant of the day leaves with it, some old, another breath, softly, and as it leaves, let the need to understand every outer detail leave with it, another breath, and as it leaves, let the habit of asking, when, begin to dissolve, another breath, and as it leaves, let the old state fade farther into the distance. You are here now. You are entering inwardly. You are moving into the chamber of fulfillment. You are allowing the mind to become quiet enough to receive what the heart has chosen. The day may have spoken many words, but now a deeper word is being spoken within you. A word without strain, a word without fear, a word of completion. It is done. Let that sentence descend slowly. It is done. Not because the senses have already announced it, not because the outer world has yet displayed the full evidence. It is done because the state has been accepted in consciousness. It is done because imagination is the first act of creation. It is done because the unseen is the parent of the seen. It is done because what you deeply accept within must seek expression without. What you longed for is already accepted. Let those words surround you. What you longed for is already accepted. The desire that seemed distant is no longer being chased. It has been received in the inner world. The answer is already alive in consciousness. You rest now as one who has received. If you desire love, do not imagine yourself reaching for love. Do not imagine yourself waiting outside its door. Let yourself feel the warmth of being cherished. Feel that you are wanted. Feel that you are chosen. Feel that affection surrounds you, whether or not the outer world has yet arranged itself to show it. Let the heart soften in the certainty that love is not far from you. It is already accepted within you. You are no longer the one asking, will I be loved? You are the one resting in the inward fact, I am loved. If you desire supply, rest now as one already provided for. Do not count burdens in the dark. Do not rehearse lack. Do not turn your bed into a chamber of calculation. Let yourself enter the feeling of sufficiency. Feel the relief of knowing that what is needed is arriving, that life is not closing around you, that provision belongs to your state. Feel the breath become easier. Feel the body. You are not pleading for abundance tonight. You are resting in the inward state of one who is supplied. You do not wait, you receive. If you desire healing, rest now as one who belongs to wholeness. Let the body be surrounded inwardly by peace. Do not force it to report perfection this instant. Do not interrogate it. Bless it. Let it receive the atmosphere of restoration. Feel a quiet current of life moving through you. Feel the softness of trust. Feel the state of wholeness as a gentle inward truth. The answer is already alive in consciousness. Let the body sleep beneath that blessing. Let every cell be bathed in the deep assumption of restoration. It is done in consciousness. The law works in silence. If you desire success, rest now as one whose path is already opening. Do not imagine struggle. Do not imagine rejection. Do not imagine yourself begging for opportunity. Feel the dignity of one. Feel the quiet confidence of one whose work has found its place. Feel the satisfaction of completion. Feel yourself no longer pressing against a closed door, but standing within the room you long to enter. The world may still be arranging its visible confirmations, but inwardly you are no longer outside. You have entered the end. I have entered the end. Let that sentence become yours. I have entered the end. Not tomorrow, not when circumstances permit. Now, in consciousness, in imagination, in the living power within me, I have entered the end. Rest there. Do not rush. Do not seek another method. Do not ask for something more complicated. The state is enough. The feeling is enough. The inward acceptance is enough. The law works in silence. Let the night deepen around you. Let the room become less important. Let the body sink more fully into rest. Let the mind lose interest in the old. If one returns, let it dissolve. You do not need to answer every thought. You do not need to continue every conversation. You do not need to review every concern. You may let the old world become quiet. And now gently allow one simple imaginal scene to form. Do not strain to create it. Let it come softly. Choose a scene that would be true if your desire were already fulfilled. It need not be elaborate. In fact, let it be simple. Let it be. Perhaps you hear the warm voice of someone saying, I am so happy for you. Hear it slowly. Hear the affection in the tone. Let those words land within you as if they are being spoken now. Perhaps you feel a hand placed gently over yours in congratulations. Feel the touch. Feel the warmth. Feel the quiet certainty that something long desired is now real. Perhaps you look upon a letter bearing good news. You do not need to read every word. You only the matter is settled. A soft wave of relief passes through you. Perhaps you are seated peacefully in a room, knowing everything is resolved. No one is rushing you. Nothing is threatened. You simply know it is done. That knowing fills the room more deeply than any object could. Perhaps you are embracing someone you love, or being embraced, and the conversation that once seemed impossible has already occurred. There is no distance now. There is warmth. There is peace. There is fulfillment. Perhaps you are walking in a body that feels lighter, freer, more whole. There is gratitude in the way you move. There is ease where fear once lived. Perhaps you are reviewing your affairs and feeling calm. The burden that once pressed upon you is gone. The matter is handled. The provision is present. The future no longer feels like a threat. Whatever scene comes, let it be yours. Let it fit the desire of your heart. Let it imply fulfillment. Do not imagine waiting. Do not imagine obstacles falling one by one. Go to the end. Stand there, live there, rest there. See through your own eyes, if images come easily. Hear through your own ears, if words arise. Feel with your own body, if sensation helps. But above all, receive the feeling. The scene is a doorway. The feeling is the chamber. Enter the chamber. It is done. I have entered the end. I do not let the scene repeat gently, if it wishes to repeat. Not with effort, not like a wheel you force to turn. Let it return softly, like a familiar melody. The voice says, I am so happy for you. The hand rests upon yours. The letter is before you. The room is peaceful. The answer has arrived. The heart relaxes. The body softens. The mind no longer leans forward. It rests back in possession. Again the scene. Again the feeling. Let the scene become less like imagination and more like memory. Not a memory of the past, but the memory of a reality already accepted in consciousness. Let it take on the tones of truth. Let it become gentle and believable. Let it become natural. You do not need to see it perfectly. You need only feel the state it implies. The answer is already alive in consciousness. You rest now as one who has received. What you longed for is already let them quiet the part of you that still wants to ask for proof. Proof is on its way through the bridge of incidents. Proof belongs to the outer world. Tonight your work is not proof. Your work is possession. Your work is to sleep from the end. So breathe from the end. Inhale as one who already has. Exhale as one who no longer pleads. Inhale as one already loved. Exhale the old loneliness. Inhale as one already supplied. Exhale the old identification with weakness. Inhale as one already successful. Exhale the old pressure to force. Inhale as one who has entered the end. Exhale as one who has finished waiting. Do not rush the breath. Let it move with the rhythm of rest. Let each breath deepen the state rather than interrupt it. You are not performing a technique now. You are allowing a new inward atmosphere to become your sleeping garment. You are clothing yourself. Perhaps you feel a deep exhale come naturally. Let it come. That may be the body agreeing with peace. Perhaps the shoulders drop a little more. Let them drop. That may be the body releasing its old vigilance. Perhaps the jaw loosens. Let it loosen. That may be the mind ceasing its argument. Perhaps a soft smile appears in the dark. Let it remain. That may be the heart recognizing possession. Perhaps there is no dramatic sensation at all, only a growing. Fulfillment is often still. Fulfillment is often peaceful. Fulfillment is often the absence of inner struggle. If the mind is no longer reaching, if the heart is no longer pleading, if the body is beginning to rest, then you are already drawing near to the state you seek. I do not wait. I receive. Let it become slower. I do not wait. I receive. Again, I do not wait. I receive. The desire is not somewhere outside you asking to be pursued. The desire has become a state within you, asking to be occupied. Occupy it now. Sit within it. Lie down within it. Breathe within it. Let the old sense of distance fade. Let the separation dissolve. You are not outside the fulfilled state. You are inside it now. If the mind asks, but what if? Answer softly, it is done. If the mind asks, but when? Answer softly, the law works in silence. If the mind asks, but what if I wake tomorrow and nothing appears changed? Answer softly, I remain in the end. The outer world is catching up. Then let the question go. You do not need to carry it farther. Return to the simple scene. Return to the feeling. Return to the end. Perhaps the loved one speaks again. I am so happy for you. Perhaps the hand grips yours again in quiet congratulations. Perhaps the room is peaceful again because the problem has vanished. Perhaps the body moves with ease again. Perhaps the heart rests because the desire is no longer uncertain. Stay with whichever scene feels gentle and sufficient. Let it become familiar. Let it repeat until it no longer feels like something you are making up, but like something you are remembering inwardly. This is how the subconscious receives. This is how the state becomes rooted. This is how sleep becomes a sanctuary of creation. The law works in silence. While you rest, it works. While the body sleeps, it works. While the conscious mind grows still, it works. While you release the burden of figuring it out, it works. While the outer world remains quiet, it works. While the seed lies hidden beneath the soil, it works. Trust the silence. Do not mistake silence for absence. The deepest processes are often silent. Seed paths form in silence. Decisions turn in silence. The unseen gathers itself in silence before it appears in form. Tonight you need not hear the machinery of the law. You need only rest in its certainty. You rest now as one who has received. Let this become the posture of the soul, not the posture of yearning, not the posture of delay, not the posture of searching, the posture of receiving. What would it feel like if all were already well? Rest there. What would it feel like if the answer were already accepted? Rest there. What would it feel like if the desire were already fulfilled in the deepest sense? Rest there. Not as a future event, not as a hope you must hold tightly, as a present inward state, as a reality now accepted in consciousness, as the truth beneath appearances. It is done. I have entered the end. I do not wait. I receive. The law works in silence. Let them become less like statements and more like lullabies of certainty. It is done. I have entered the end. I do not wait. I receive. The law works in silence. Again, more softly. It is done. I have entered the end. I do not wait. I receive. The law works in silence. If your desire concerns love, let the state of love become the warmth in which you sleep. Let it be around you like evening air. You are chosen. You are already held in consciousness by the fulfillment you have accepted. Sleep as one beloved. If your desire concerns provision, let the state of supply become the ground beneath you. You are supported. You are sustained. You are not abandoned to uncertainty. The answer is alive. The means are forming. Sleep as one provided for. If your desire concerns health, let the state of wholeness become the quiet music within the body. There is life in you. There is peace. Sleep as one restored. If your desire concerns success, let the state of completion become your inward crown. The path is opening. Recognition is forming. Right place, right moment, right arrangement. Sleep as one whose purpose is finding expression. If your desire concerns peace itself, let peace cease being a goal and become the very atmosphere of this moment. You need not solve every question before rest. You may sleep. What you longed for is already accepted. The answer is already alive in consciousness. You rest now as one who has received. Now let the scene grow softer. It does not need to remain sharp. As sleep approaches, details may blur. That is perfectly well. The feeling is what matters. Let the feeling remain as the image fades. Let relief remain. Let gratitude remain. Let certainty remain. Let possession remain. Let the feeling may dissolve into rest. The rest may dissolve into sleep. And sleep will carry the state deeper. You do not need to stay alert to maintain it. You do not need to keep working after sleep begins. The final impression is enough. The chosen feeling is enough. The accepted state is enough. The subconscious receives it. The law continues. The bridge forms. The answer moves toward expression through channels you do not need to know. It is done. Let that become. It is done. Let it move almost beneath hearing. It is done. Let the body grow heavier. Let the bed hold you. Let the night hold you. Let the state hold you. I have entered the end. You have entered the end. You do not stand outside it. You are within it. I do not wait. I receive. You do not wait. You receive. The law works in silence. The law works in silence. The law works in silence. If any concern returns, you owe anxiety no more conversation tonight. You owe fear no more hospitality tonight. You owe the old state no more attention tonight. This night belongs to fulfillment. This sleep belongs to fulfillment. This deep inner descent belongs to the reality you have chosen. Let the breath become effortless. Let the limbs become heavy. Let the thoughts spread farther apart. Let the room dim inwardly. Let the world fall away. What remains is the state. What remains is the quiet certainty that what you have accepted within must take form without. You rest now as one who has received. You rest now as one already loved. You rest now as one already supplied. You rest now as one already restored. You rest now as one already guided. You rest now as one already answered. You rest now as one who has entered the end. Let the old day end completely. Let every unfinished this moment belongs to inward fulfillment. This night belongs to the deep assumption that what you seek is not distant, not denied, not absent, but alive within consciousness now. It is done. There is nothing to chase. There is nothing to prove. There is nothing to force. There is only the state to receive. There is only the feeling to rest in. There is only the deep knowing to carry into sleep. The law works in silence. And as you drift, yes, it is accepted. Yes, I have entered the end. Yes, I rest as one who has received. Yes, the answer is alive. Yes, I do not wait, I receive. Yes, the law works in silence. And now let even the words become unnecessary. Let the state remain when language fades. Let fulfillment remain when thought grows dim. Let certainty remain when sleep arrives. Fall asleep inside the wish fulfilled. Fall asleep